Guess I can turn this on. Oh, they turned it on.
Okay. All right, 7 o'clock. Let's go ahead and start the planning commission meeting for October 5th. All righty. First item is call to order. Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
Oh, just beat roll call.
Just made it.
Okay. Ms. Dobson? Here. Mr. Earhart? Mr. Mitchell?
Here.
Mr. Aravallo?
Here.
Mrs. Dominic?
Here.
Mr. Sly?
Here.
Mrs. Squire?
Cindy?
Mr. Welsh? Chairman, we have a quorum.
All right. Any changes to the agenda this evening?
No.
Entertain a motion for the agenda.
I'd like a motion to approve the agenda as it stands.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as stands. Start the voting on the left.
Aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0.
Aye.
Oh,
There she is.
there she is. Hi, Cindy.
Hello. I thought I had it unmuted and I didn't.
Okay. Motion carries 6-0. All right, citizen participation. And I have a list of everybody that has signed up to speak this evening. It looks like most people are for agenda item 5. There are a couple that didn't mark what they were here for. Does anybody have anything that they would like to speak except for item 5 on the agenda? All right, so just as a point of clarification, item 5 is not a public hearing tonight, but because we have so many people here that would like to speak on it, we are going to allow 2 minutes per person, and we're going to ask you to address the new items that are involved with this. Okay, so we don't want you to come up and rehash the items that we discussed before at the public hearing, but we do want to give you an opportunity to say your piece. Is that clear? And we'd ask everybody to be civil. Okay? All right, moving on to the formal commission actions. Approval of minutes for September 11th, 2023.
I don't have any issues with it. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes from September 11th, 2023 meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Start the voting on the left.
Aye.
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 Motion carries 6-0. Alrighty. Moving on to item number 2. Site plan for the, sorry, getting all my stuff mixed up here. Got too many screens open. Site application 117-2023, Spring Hill Fire Station Storage Building.
Good evening. Tonight we have proposed site plan SP-000117-2023 for 20500 West 207th. Applicant is Johnson County Department of Emergency Services. This is located just on the northeast corner of 207th and Webster. It's zoned M1 for a storage building, which does allow for that in the zone. The zoning district is M1 General Industrial, has no minimum lot dimensions, therefore the lot is sufficient size. Site stormwater removal will be reviewed by the city engineer. Lot lighting will be reviewed at the building permit stage. All lighting must be projected down. Lot is subject to a 10-cent square foot park impact fee that will be collected before building permit is issued. And installation of sidewalks along the street is required and needs to be shown on the site plan. So we will make sure that is done. You have a couple different options. You can recommend approval of the application to the governing body, recommend denial of the application, or table it. And staff recommends approval of the site plan 117-2023 Spring Hill Fire Station Storage B. And I think their engineer is here if you have any specific questions for them, or I can try to answer it.
Okay.
Who pays the fee? The 10 cents?
The applicant.
Johnson County.
Turn your mic on.
Sorry. Which we fund.
That would be better answered by them. I don't think so.
We don't fund the fire district.
The applicant,
This is
yeah,
Johnson
Johnson County,
Department of Emergency Services.
Do you need my help?
maybe.
Sure, you're welcome to.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name's Judd Clausen. I'm with Phelps Engineering, 1270 North Winchester, Olathe, Kansas, appearing on behalf of Johnson County Department of Emergency Services for this storage building project. If there's some questions I can answer, I'd be happy to do that. Chief Jim Francis is also here with us tonight.
So, I'm sorry, you asked a question about,
I'm sorry, I thought I just got the answer. So, does the city do we fund the fire department? I was just asking, I thought it was strange that it said you had to pay 10 cents per square foot before it's built. But don't we pay for that anyway? Who's paying the 10 cents? You?
Well, to be
County,
Johnson County.
the fire district.
So yeah, it's not the city's fire.
No, this is.
Right.
We explained it during the one city.
Go ahead.
council meeting.
Hi, Jim Francis, Fire Services Administrator for Johnson County. Johnson County, specifically Department of Emergency Services I represent Fire District 2, who owns this facility, who you're under contract with. Fire District 2, a portion of your city is in the taxing district. A portion of your city is served by a contractual agreement with Fire District 2. So the city is split really in two on whether it's, but obviously it's not a city fire department. It's a county fire district fire department funded by the fire district and through other contractual fees that the city pays. Does that address your question?
Sure.
you're satisfied with that answer?
Well,
You don't seem satisfied.
maybe it's not, maybe it's irrelevant is what I'm sitting here thinking, because maybe, I don't know, I just wonder, who's the 10 cents go to? And, I mean, I know it says per square foot, but I just wondered who, they're collecting that. Is that getting paid to the city?
Yeah, that's the
Yes.
building permit.
Okay. That's, I was thinking if we own it anyway.
We're paying ourselves.
No,
Yeah, so it's not just us paying ourselves. So yeah, like you said, we have a contract with the fire department or the fire district.
Great,
So
okay,
in an incredibly roundabout way, maybe kind of paying ourselves, but not really. It's
Okay.
yeah.
thank you.
What's your, just my curiosity, what's the building gonna be used for?
So
You can't get away that easy.
the fire district is really outgrown the existing facility that's now 20 years old. We have an abundance of apparatus and other supplemental equipment in the building. To some degree, posing a safety risk for firefighters inside, because we had a lot of things in there today that we didn't have 20 years ago. For example, water rescue equipment, boats on trailers, ATVs on trailers. We don't have space for a reserve brush rig. We don't have space for a reserve engine. The purpose of the building is to house a reserve engine, a reserve brush rig, move the trailers out of the existing bay, put them in there where they can be easily accessed and already connected to an SUV for a rapid response. The way it is now, apparatus literally has to move out, another one has to back in, they have to hook up to a trailer, So there's a time delay associated with that, and there's a safety problem for firefighters navigating from one end of the bay to the other. So that's really the intent of the storage building.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was at the city council meeting when the chief made his presentation to the city council. And evidently you have a big shortage of space. And that's why the building is being proposed.
Yes.
I just have a question about, like, one of the staff comments is the installation of the sidewalks are required. Is there a reason it's not in the site plan at this point?
Well, that really kind of came up as a late comment. We didn't receive that initially, so it's just why it's a stipulation.
So that would be along 207th?
Yes.
So we have some sidewalks there already, and then we have, most of it's just the approach for the fire department, looks like, looking at the property.
Yeah.
So the sidewalks would go from the very west ends to the entrance, is that correct?
I believe that's the understanding for that sidewalk.
And would it also cover the east end of the, from where the current approach is to the property line?
That's something I'd have to ask the city engineer,
Okay.
you know, what they're looking for.
I was looking
there,
at Amy on that one, so,
but,
I don't think it does, but we'll double check.
okay,
I think it's just the west portion.
okay. I just know that we're trying to get all of the sidewalks in,
Right.
and so, okay, so, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That's why I was asking.
Yeah.
I don't have any further questions.
Mary?
Nope, I'm good.
Cindy? If you're talking, you're muted. I guess it means she has no questions. All right. Thank you very much. Anybody, any deliberation?
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Don't know. Okay. Like I said, any deliberation?
I'm satisfied.
Anybody want to make a motion?
Motion to approve site plan SP 117-2023, Spring Hill Fire Station Storage B.
Second.
Any stipulations?
And with the addition of the sidewalk
Okay.
on the plan.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion before that? Before we vote? All right, start the voting on the left.
Aye.
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 Motion carries 6-0. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to item number 3, preliminary plat 113-2023 for Bedrock Concrete.
Okay, you guys approved the site plan a while ago on this. This is proposed preliminary plat for Bedrock Concrete, plat 0001113-2023. This is located at the northwest corner of 223rd and Lone Elm. It's 6.4 acres of M1 general industrial zoning. They have, Payne and Brockway, on behalf of Bedrock, has submitted a preliminary plat containing 6.41 acres of general industrial district M1 zoned property located at 223rd and Lone Elm. The zoning district of M1 has no minimum lot dimensions, therefore the lot is enough. A traffic impact study was submitted with the site plan. A landscaping plan was submitted and approved with the site plan as well. Excise tax will be calculated and paid before the recording of the final plat. You can approve the application with modifications, table it, or reject the application. Staff does recommend approval of preliminary plat 113-2023 for Bedrock Concrete.
Amy, was there any, things in the traffic study that, did we get see that, or
You did with the site plan, yes. And there wasn't any.
there wasn't anything?
So there'll be two entrances on 223rd and then one on Lone Elm.
Correct. Todd with Payne and Brockways here.
Will these just be concrete trucks or semis coming in and out of that?
Todd Allenbrand, Payne and Brockway, 426 South Kansas Avenue. Thanks, Commissioners, for having the opportunity to come forward. Yeah, there'll be some tractor trailers that'll come migrate into and out of the site. They have facilities where they haul gravel and various things for construction sites. But for the most part, it's gonna be either trucks, 2-ton trucks, 3-ton trucks with trailers and maybe a backhoe on it or something like that where they need to go out and do the sites. But as you said, there's 2 entrances. There's currently 3 existing entrances on 223rd. We're closing one of the concrete ones and then moving one further to the west. So we're eliminating one of the 2 that you can kind of see if you drive out there today. And then the one on Lone Elm, there's actually an existing entrance there. We're just making it, it's being constructed to a better level than what it currently is. So that's what about the driveways, that's it. If there's any other things.
And then that'll give enough room for them to swing out, like if they're leaving without having to go, I guess, into the other side of the gravel, on the other side of the road.
Yeah, we ran vehicle movements of tractor trailers through there, so
Okay.
the radiuses are gonna be a lot larger than what they are currently out there to give them the access, so there shouldn't be any issues. And I don't know what their trips daily would be of a tractor trailer. The owner, John Rhodes, is here. He might be able to, wants to come up, he might be able to answer that question about how often they have tractor trailers in and out of the site.
We haul for ready-mix companies in Kansas City area, and the trucks leave in the morning, usually about 5 a.m., and they can return around 3 p.m.
Okay,
So
so it's
they're-
not like an overnight,
No, it's not like a warehouse or cross-docking station where there's trucks coming in and out all day. They leave in the morning, at the end of the day, they come back. So, in the middle of the day, there's no traffic except for office people going to get lunch, and that's it.
So this is just the office building? It's not
Yes.
concrete plant or anything?
No, we're not a concrete plant. We're a contractor.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I can't really see this very well. Your building, is it 2 buildings?
It's two buildings and a shed. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Where's the shed at? I'm sorry, I don't see that.
it's
little one.
no, it's not on that plan. It's on the TV.
Oh, it's on the next page.
Well, these plans wouldn't have to show the improvements. This is like the preliminary, so it shows what kind of existing conditions would look like.
Yeah.
But that was on the development plan and on the construction documents, the buildings.
It's not gonna exceed the weight on the bridge of 223rd with any of the bigger ones?
I
No.
hope not.
Well, like if 2 are, are passing or something.
Yeah. You mean the bridge over the highway? Over 169 highway? Oh, no. I mean, that thing was probably, I can't say, but I'm sure it's more than sufficient to handle tractor trailers.
This might be more for Amy. Are there sidewalks required on this?
I don't think there were. I can't remember on the site plan. I don't think there were.
No, there wasn't sidewalks with this, but there is, if 223rd Street improves and say Lone Elm improves, at that time the sidewalks would be installed.
Okay.
Doesn't bode very well to put sidewalks in right now. It's not really a great road to stick sidewalks on, and there's not really anywhere for it goes to nowhere.
Yeah, I've driven back there because there's some homes back in there too. They could be
Yeah.
a little bit further on the road.
Yeah, those homes to the north of here, the existing subdivision's been there like 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
So this is a preliminary plat, so we should see all the buildings, all the improvements that are planned on it, though, correct?
I think all that was done on the site plan.
Oh, was it? Oh, on the next, I see. It's kind of on the next page.
Yeah, it's on the next page.
Okay.
So we're kind of, I think Troy had a good question. It's almost like backwards, right? The site plan usually after the preliminary plan. So I think that's why the question came up, yeah. I don't have any questions since this is just a preliminary plat.
Any other questions for applicants?
I'm good.
Any debate?
I don't have a problem with it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary plat 113-2023 Bedrock Concrete as presented by staff.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Start the voting on the left.
Aye.
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 Motion carries 6-0. Moving right along, we are down to item number 4.
Yep, so this is the final plat, to the preliminary that you just approved. Plat 115-2023, for Bedrock Concrete, located at 223rd and Lone Elm. The zoning, again, is M1. There's no issues with the lot size. An approved site plan and building permit is already being constructed. The plat is being proposed to enable the ability for a future lot split and have clean boundaries with easements. Staff has verified all due or unpaid taxes have been paid in full. Adequate control of stormwater through appropriate BMPs will be detailed on drawings submitted by the city engineer for approval. Erosion control will be installed per city standards. The plat is required to have 15-foot utility easements around all sides. A traffic impact study was submitted and reviewed with the site plan. Excise tax will be calculated and paid before recording of the plat. The improvement agreement is being prepared by staff. It'll be reviewed by the city engineer and city attorney. And that will also be approved by the governing body along with the final plat. You can recommend approval, deny the application, or table it. Staff does recommend approval of the final plat, 115-2023 for Bedrock.
And I see they do have the sidewalks in there on number 9 as part of the agreement to be installed when the improvements take
Yes.
place
Yeah.
in the future.
Sorry.
Which is good. I don't have any further questions, Chairman.
Anybody else have any questions?
I don't have any other.
No, I do not.
Entertain a motion?
I move approval of final plat, application, number 000115-2023 for the Bedrock Concrete Any revisions to the plat have to be approved by the city engineer.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Start the voting on the right this time.
Aye.
Oh, yeah, she's right.
Aye.
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 Motion carries 6-0. All right, moving on to the last item. Everybody's excited about hearing about. All right, public hearing. This is not actually a public hearing. This is a item that has been remanded by the city council back to the planning commission for review. Is that correct?
Correct. I won't go through everything we did. I'll do a little project update. So at the September 28th city council meeting, the council remanded the application back to planning commission for additional considerations. As you have attached to this is Exhibit A, which lists the list of stipulations, that the city council would like for you to consider. If you want me, let me see. Would you like for me to read them?
Sure.
Okay.
And I'm having to read it. We have it up here in front of us, but the public does not, so.
Okay, so stipulation, 1, 2, 3, and 4, is from a letter from Overland, Property Group dated 9/27/23. Stipulation number 1 was to add decorative or architectural fencing must be provided around the perimeter of the development with pedestrian access gates at any intersections with sidewalks. No gate will be required at the single resident vehicle access location. The style of such fence along the west, north, and east will be complementary to the architectural design of residential buildings and constructed of black metal spires or pickets with masonry corner posts. The style of such fence along the south side of the property will consist of 6-foot tall, 100% opaque wooden pickets. Stipulation number 2, no resident access driveway will be provided along Jefferson Street. Number 3, all patios and balconies will be removed from residential buildings. Number 4, the sidewalk access will be extended across the subject property west along 223rd and south along the western line to connect to existing trail system, providing pedestrian access to Price Chopper Black Hawk Park and Black Hawk Retail Center. And then they added adjusting to look at and consider adjusting from a 3-story to a 2-story. All the changes in the site plan from Planning Commission meeting on September, that should be 11th, to this evening's meeting of 9/28. Clarifying that this project cannot be built as it sits in the current zoning, and final consideration of moving the trash receptacle to a different location on the property. And that motion was carried by a roll call vote of 3-2.
Okay,
Can I?
sure.
I'm gonna jump in here because I believe we turned it down because we didn't want to rezone from C2 to RP4, correct? And
Correct.
part of that was they were wanting to rezone to RP4 to get approval for funding, I recall. The only reason they, and I think Pat had mentioned that they could build the same thing on C2, but I don't know if that's really.
So,
With the no-
yeah, if you don't mind me jumping in,
Go ahead, yeah.
the only way that any residential can be built on C2 is with a overlay district, a CO overlay district.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
To get the overlay district, you go through a public hearing process and you apply the standards of a rezoning. So candidly, that's kind of one of these weird things about the code of you would do the exact same things for an overlay district that you would do to rezone it to RP4. And an overlay district is designed to basically downzone commercial, which is what downzoning to RP4 is still a downzoning. So it achieves the same objective. And this overlay district is supposed to put some teeth on it and make it tight. Well, that's exactly what the P part of that RP4 does. So essentially in this case, the RP4 is going to have no actual difference between your overlay district in the way this is done.
Okay,
So-
thank you, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. The other comment I have though is what Josh Earhart brought up, which he's not here this week, and I totally agreed with him, is that we seem to be rezoning things, and then they, half of them don't get put in place. So one of the things I'd like the whole board here to take a step back is to say, should that be rezoned from C2 to RP4 without even looking at what's going on there, and just in case it never comes to fruition, should it be zoned RP4 there? So that's part of the reason I think Josh brought that up, and I agreed with him 100% the last time we had this meeting.
And
I'm still not convinced on a 4-acre lot that we should rezone that to RP4. So that's why I'm bringing that up.
No, and I think I'll leave it to the applicant. I expect, this is a project that I think has a higher likelihood of getting built. They go through a grant funding program, the money's there, it's ready to go. So as far as this, and I'll let them kind of get into that, but I would say from a staff perspective, less worried that this is something that's gonna be rezoned and then sit there still vacant a year from now, 2 years from now.
Yeah, so the real question comes out, should it be rezoned from C2 to RP4? And was the real initial zoning correct or not, in my opinion? We seem to be doing a lot of that in the city, rezoning things in the hope of things will get built, and then it doesn't happen. But yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Spencer. On the probability is higher for this.
Are you wanting us to discuss this now, or what are we doing?
Well, this is not a typical item for us, so there's no like set way that we should be discussing this,
Okay,
so.
I just didn't know if I should.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes,
back up to the conditions that were listed by Amy just a minute ago. Amy, I thought that we were supposed to also be that council wanted us to consider right in, right out on 223rd. Was that not one of their stipulations?
It was not one of the considerations, I don't believe. What I read
Okay.
came from the secretary.
Okay.
But it was discussed.
Right. I think it would behoove the commission to at least address that point. That's something that Councilman Young addressed. So I don't think it would hurt for you guys to have that discussion. It might just be that it is or isn't possible. It might be a quick, easy one, but that's a question that I would recommend being asked of the applicant.
Okay, I thought I had heard that, but I couldn't remember if it was Young or Van Houten that had brought it up.
Thank you, Ms.
That was
Squire.
all.
So yeah, you all, and because this isn't a typical public hearing, if you can follow the guidelines of a public hearing, even though it isn't one. And just to be clear, I mean, the public hearing is closed and it's over. So you can set this up however you want. You can live it in Bizarro world and do it backwards or whatever. You can talk and then have the applicant and then people. You can have, there's how many permutations of those three things you can do? I'm terrible at math, but yeah, why don't you guys talk amongst yourselves and see who you want to hear from and in what order?
Well, I got more questions. So
Okay.
another thing I'd like to bring up, they have here adjust from a 3-story to 2-story. How does that adjust the number of apartments and the sizes?
Well,
It won't.
They're
They
the
have
same
to
number?
do 48, I believe.
But they had 3 stories before when they?
so yeah, and again, the applicant will touch this, but to go from 3 to 2, it would widen the footprint. They can't change the number. They can't go up or down. So the good news is they're not going to add more on you later, but they can't decrease them on the plan that was submitted to the state. So decreasing the height would increase that kind of footprint.
Okay.
Is the word.
so,
I just-
so from the questions I'm seeing coming through right now, how about if we have the applicants present and maybe answer some questions, because it sounds like most of the questions are gonna be to them.
Yeah,
And
that's
then-
all my
Then we'll give
questions
then we'll give the public an opportunity to speak to what the applicant has to
Yep.
say. That's okay.
Yeah. So, sorry, Mr. Slight. Lawyers love throwing the ball to somebody else. So I wasn't trying to force you to talk to the applicant. It's-
Can I ask a question before you start also?
yeah.
I really feel, because I've been, involved in this thing since you guys proposed it in April, and I watched the city council meeting, but I really feel like you guys are like trying to push a square peg in a round hole. Like you're like, okay, we'll take off the patios, nobody can go out on a balcony. I mean, it's just like you just want a building stripped down, stuck in this one spot, when everybody else is saying it doesn't belong here. So what is the motive? What's the profit margin? I mean, what do you guys gain from getting this building that everybody clearly feels doesn't belong there?
So I think it would I'm more than happy to answer that directly. I think it would be, we have a presentation prepared that kind of addresses the majority of those
Okay.
concerns that I think will kind of speak to that. I think generally speaking, the motivation for this, obviously that we have a vested interest in having a building developed, but the real goal of this is to provide affordable housing for Spring Hill. So it's considered as at the, entire community level, what's the best for the community is really a lot of the guiding motivation behind this. So that being said, let me pop this up real quick. So I'm going to skip through some of this and just get straight into the details. So I think to address some of the points that were brought up earlier, the city council did ask to consider this with some changes between the last time that you guys have seen this and now. And so this is essentially our attempt at addressing or going through each of the stipulations presented and kind of walking through each of those items to modify the site plan. Again, none of these constitute real substantial changes, but they are in response to comments that we've received over the past couple weeks. I think another clarifying point here is I think it was a little bit difficult to see the last time we were in the planning commission. The plan that was shown is like an architectural level drawing where you have, topographic lines, you've got the right of ways and all that stuff where you can't really see, the sidewalks, you can't see the actual layout of the buildings, and you can't really see how the site would lay out from an aerial perspective. So this is an attempt at kind of cleaning that up and really giving everyone a clean view of what the site, generally will look like. Another clarifying point, kind of to the whole like profit motive perspective that was just raised. I want to be clear that there are no incentives approved at the city level for this development. There's no property tax exemption. There's no sales tax exemption. We anticipate roughly $350,000 in property tax revenue over the first 10 years of economic life for the development. And we're anticipating over $500,000 in sales tax being generated by the construction of this facility. So no incentives have been approved at the city level. All of that stuff is handled on the back end side by the financing mechanism we use through the state. So I just wanted to make that clear. To directly kind of go into some of the points that I think are really the meat and bones of this conversation, we've kind of taken the majority of the comments from the planning commission last or on the 11th, public comments that were made at that meeting, comments made by the planning commission, comments made by city council members. We've also been hitting the ground as much as possible over the past few weeks to talk to as many members of the public that we can to really kind of understand what the major concerns are. And we've kind of distilled those down into 7 major themes, and I'll walk through each of those individual themes to show kind of why we're approaching it this way and some of the items that we're offering to change just to be good neighbors. So I think the main question that really comes to mind at the beginning is the location. So Debbie, to your point, why did we pick this location? I think there are 2 guiding principles that we use when we source developments, when we look for areas to put developments. We use comprehensive plans that are generated by cities, and we use the zoning ordinances that exist within those jurisdictions. So the comprehensive plan being the primary factor for which we look at. Again, this is directly from the comprehensive plan. This is the future land use map. You'll notice 2 black stars on this map. The top right is our location. The bottom left is Black Hawk Apartments. They are both in mixed-use commercial future land use districts from the comp plan. And if we go into the specific, dialogue within the comp plan, it specifically spells out this category promotes a mixture of different uses and medium to higher density residential uses. So it's specifically called out in the site plan or in the comprehensive plan that higher density residential uses are encouraged in these locations. As to some of the stipulations that were provided in the exhibit, the reason that we've gone with a 3-story building is because, again, it's specifically referenced in the comprehensive plan. Multifamily buildings should be generally limited to 2 stories in height for areas that are designated on the future land use map as residential. Again, this site is not designated as residential, while buildings of more than 3 stories in height should be directed to areas designated as mixed-use residential or mixed-use commercial. So the reason that the building is 3 stories is because, again, following the letter of the comp plan, it's encouraged to have buildings of 3 stories in this district. So kind of setting that primary argument, aside, again, one factor to consider is the comprehensive plan. The other factor to consider is the actual zoning ordinance for the given areas. So as was mentioned in the last planning commission meeting, this is currently zoned as C2, general business district. And again, these are pulling directly from the zoning ordinances. So one thing that I want to highlight for the C2 general business district is kind of right in that center portion. It says the C2 district shall typically be directed to limited areas appropriate for the highest intensity development, such at interchanges along US 169 highway rather than near residential neighborhoods. So the existing zoning in the letter of the zoning code says that it should not be directed near residential neighborhoods. Again, to the other point of intensity, highest intensity commercial uses are encouraged in this area. So the reason that we are proposing rezoning to R4 is that it better fits the character of the neighborhood. Again, going by the comprehensive plan and by the R4 zoning ordinance. Again, the bottom portion of the page, this highlighted the highlighted text, residential development exceeding 6 dwelling units per acre are intended for areas designated as mixed use. So, within the zoning ordinance, matching up with the comprehensive plan, all of those point towards this location being an appropriate location for higher density residential use. And again, with the comp plan, 3 stories or higher. Setting that kind of, again, aside, one thing we also have to consider is, what is left? If, the existing zoning is saying this shouldn't be near a residential neighborhood, I think it's a pretty open and shut argument that no one would really want to make the argument to upzone it to manufacturing or industrial. So really the only thing left is a residential use. And again, the comp plan states that, higher density is encouraged in this area. So that's kind of our perspective on it. And I think judging by the staff report and the way that city staff is reviewing it as well, they reached the same conclusion. So again, these are directly from the staff report that was generated. Use well-designed multifamily housing to transition between single-family housing and areas of higher intensity commercial uses. So if we think about where this site location is, you have a single-family subdivision to the south. You have a transition zone, again, designated by the comp plan of higher density residential that transitions to a higher density commercial use across the street on the larger parcel. So again, all 3 of these points in the city staff report align that the staff generally agrees that this does follow the letter of the comp plan, and it is an appropriate use to rezone this to RP4 within this district. So I think that's really probably one of the major themes about why this location was selected. I think the other thing to consider, and there's a couple of other things that we'll walk through, but another one of the major concerns or the major themes that have been raised over the past few weeks is traffic along 223rd Street, along Jefferson Street and Victory Road. So we have our civil engineer and our traffic expert here. They can answer any questions, but I think it's important to highlight that there's a third-party traffic impact analysis that we contract, we have commissioned that evaluates traffic conditions in the area and compares the future use to the existing conditions. And then that third-party report is then sent to city staff. They also have a third-party engineering firm review those results. And in the bolded portion, you can see that the third-party review that the city contracted agreed with the conclusions of the traffic impact analysis that was studied. And the result of that is that there's no traffic impact to the surrounding area during non-peak hours and only a marginal impact to traffic at peak hours. So we have 2 separate engineering firms that have reviewed the same traffic study, both reaching the same conclusion that there is not a significant impact or really any impact to traffic based on this development. To kind of, again, draw the same parallels that we did on the location side, what we're really doing in this instance is comparing it to the existing zoning. So again, gathering comments over the past 2 to 3 weeks, really trying to understand what the most plausible uses are within the area. That's what we're comparing to under the existing zoning. So we have 3 different case studies here, again, prepared by our traffic engineers. That, case study number 1 is a retail plaza, again, allowed in the existing C2 zoning, generates 4 times more daily traffic and 4 1/4 more traffic at the peak hour. Case study number 2, a convenience store and a gas station, 3 1/4 more traffic during, non-peak hours or daily traffic, and then 3 1/2 times more traffic at the peak hours. Case study number 3, drive-through restaurants, 28% more traffic daily and up to 7 1/4 times more traffic at the peak hours. So no matter how you look at it across the board, the existing zoning allows for a higher traffic impact than what it is we're attempting to rezone this property down to. So the impact is, from an intensity perspective, better under RP4 than it is under existing conditions, and that's kind of in complement to the location. It just, again, speaks to the appropriateness for this location. Yeah, so again, all of that being said, we have reviewed this site with two separate engineering firms. We've really dug into this as much as possible to try and come up with the best solutions. Against kind of all of that, you know, the preponderance of evidence there, we are still trying to be the best neighbors that we possibly can. So we are still going to propose removing access along Jefferson Street to keep traffic out of the subdivision along that road. We have confirmed with our traffic engineers that it's not, again, it's still not a marginal impact on, or not a significant impact along Victory Road to do so. It does follow code requirements, which I think the city can help us kind of confirm. But we're still willing to do that. Again, we want to be as good of neighbors as possible. We're trying to make this work. We're trying to be flexible and be, you know, good partners for the city and the community. So we are offering to do that. That is why it's included in the stipulations for review. So that's really the kind of overarching theme around traffic and safety. There are a couple other ancillary items that I think were raised, and candidly, I think this is a good one that's been mentioned multiple times tonight, is connectivity, so sidewalks. We are proposing to install a sidewalk system not only around our development, but around the parcel to the west that we are also under contract on. And really the intent there is to connect it to as many public amenities as we possibly can. So there's a trailhead kind of on the western or on the left portion of that picture, right where that burnt orange line terminates. That's the existing trailhead for a trail that goes by like Black Hawk Park, the Price Chopper, so on and so forth. So we are proposing connecting to that. Actually, as the result, as from the neighborhood meeting that was conducted this week, the neighbors would actually prefer if we run it along the south property line instead of along 223rd and connect it to essentially Jefferson Street and have a crosswalk there as opposed to up north. Again, trying to be good neighbors, trying to do everything we possibly can to, you know, make this as best as it possibly can be. We're willing to do that. So, and again, that's a cost that's borne at the developer level. The city does not have any expense associated with installing those sidewalks. We're offering to do those at our expense. Another comment was neighborhood effects and safety. I think it's important here. I think that was candidly a big part of the conversation last time we were up here, where was, you know, how can we keep residents safe? How can we make, you know, the development as safe as possible? One thing to point out is that this has the same landscaping requirements, again, going back to the existing zoning, same landscaping requirements, landscaping intensity requirements as commercial zoning. So it's still high intensity landscaping, 6 foot opaque, 6 foot opaque wooden picket fence, and then the same, you know, or low density screening in front of that. So again, same as existing zoning. There's no, you know, detriment to rezoning it from a landscaping perspective if we go to RP4. For the architectural fence that extends around the property, again, trying to avoid people being able to have direct access to 223rd Street. A good example of what that can look like, I know there's been a couple comments about what exactly is decorative or architectural fencing. The idea is kind of up in the top right corner, something, you know, a little bit more ornate, something decorative that can kind of act as a barrier for access directly to those streets. Again, to the stipulations, bringing it inside the sidewalk line so that you don't have to be a member of the community to be able to use the sidewalk in front of the property. But yeah, just trying to be good neighbors, install as many amenities as we possibly can to make this work. I think the last thing to consider, or the last kind of major theme, is the distance from the neighboring properties. So the primary thing to consider here, again, is comparing it to the existing zoning that is currently on the property now, C2 zoning. So this table on the right side of the screen shows a bunch of different development standards, again, directly referenced from the zoning ordinance for C2 zoning, and then what we are actually intending to deliver with this development. So as you can see, there's no minimum lot size, width, or depth for C2 zoning. They can be subdivided at will. This will have a single lot. Again, to Spencer's point earlier, what you see is what you get with this. There's never going to be any more buildings. There's never going to be any higher density. What is being looked at and considered is what will be there. There won't be any modifications to that from a density perspective or a lot size perspective. The setback requirements, same kind of concept. We are further back from 223rd Street and further back from the side streets, as well as further back from the rear property line than anything that is currently allowed to be in the existing zoning. We are also shorter than the maximum height allowed in the existing zoning. So across the board, the proposal has a less intense use than what is currently allowed in the zoning ordinance. These buildings are over half a football field away from any of the neighboring buildings. But again, in an effort to try and be as good of neighbors as possible, we've elected to propose removing the balconies and patios so that there isn't the perceived concern of someone being able to look over a balcony into someone's backyard. Again, you're half a football field away. There is some existing landscaping there that kind of shields the sight line. But again, the point is we're really trying to be as good of neighbors as possible and really make things appropriate where we can. So removing the patios and balconies is an attempt to kind of help alleviate some of those concerns. So this is an example of what can be allowed under under the current zoning. This is a commercial building. Again, imagine this 2 times taller, 25 feet from the rear property line. So at the end of the day, what we're really trying to kind of convey here is we're comparing it to the existing zoning. This fits within the comprehensive plan. It fits within the zoning ordinances. The proposed use is more suitable for this area than what is currently allowed under the existing zoning. We do have our attorney here tonight. He's also a resident zoning expert, and so he's gonna have a few more things to say, and I think I'll turn it over to him now.
Thank you, members of the commission. Greg Musel, 11005 West 141st Street, Overland Park, Kansas 66221. Appreciate the opportunity. You guys always have a tough job. Sometimes it's tougher than others. What I've been asked to do is simply go through some of the things that have to be considered in this, because it's a difficult situation when you have neighbors that come in and are concerned about a particular rezoning. And it's difficult sometimes to set aside and understand exactly what the obligations are. Kansas law says you can't be arbitrary and capricious. You have to follow the factual record that's in front of you. You need to act reasonably, and rezoning cannot be based upon a fancy word, plebiscite of the neighborhood. It's not a vote of the immediate neighbors. It has to be taken into consideration for the entire community. You probably all heard of the Golden versus City of Overland Park case, which we refer to in Kansas as the Golden Rule, and it's not called that anyplace else in America, but because of the name of the case. Reasonableness is a test. It's quasi-judicial. It's not a purely political decision, and it can't be based just on the number of people that come and protest and are upset about it. And the Spring Hill ordinance, your ordinances incorporate the tests that were set out in the Golden versus City of Overland Park. I'm going to run through those very quickly. Is this rezoning consistent with the purposes of the ordinance and the intent of the proposed district? The proposed district, RP4, is what you heard from Austin. It was intended to be medium to high density residential in a mixed use residential area under your comprehensive plan. So the purpose and intent of the ordinance is met. The character of the neighborhood, the neighbors believe this is a single family neighborhood. It is a single family neighborhood, and it is an intense commercial neighborhood. You see the map on there. They are surrounded by commercial uses. So what this would impose there is, instead of that red block at our area, would be a different color that would be less intense than the commercial right next to the residential. The character of this neighborhood is mixed use with heavy commercial, heavily traveled 223rd Street, and then single family homes to the south. The zoning and uses of nearby properties is really the same thing. You've got single family zoning and you've got commercial zoning. Requested because of changes in conditions. This has been zoned for over 20 years as a C2 use, with no development on it, nobody seriously interested. And the landowner's attorney is here tonight too and would like to speak and can talk to you about the interest of the landowner, because that's somebody we normally don't talk about. We talk about the developer, we talk about the neighbors. The landowner here has owned this land for decades, and it's not been sold, it's not been developed as C2. And we now have an affordable housing issue that, if you watch the city council meeting, as Commissioner Dominic did, several people described it as desperate or immediate, serious need for affordable housing in your community and every community. And then the next one is the suitability of the parcel for uses restricted by the current zone. So C2 zoning, it's been restricted by that for 20 plus years, and nothing's gone in there. And the kinds of uses you can have there, because we heard at the city council meeting, we've heard otherwise, we like commercial next to our single family. Austin showed you what might go there and the setback differences and the heights differences. And if a Goodwill store goes there or a Wendy's and a Taco Bell goes there, it is unlikely that you're going to be here with everybody in support of that rezoning, because it is a very intense use. It will go hours into the evening later than anything that this RP4 will do. Suitability of the parcel for uses permitted by the proposed district. It is suitable for RP4. In fact, if you look at the land use intensity, the amount of square footage taken by the building, this is not putting a square peg in a round hole, it's putting a round peg in a bigger square hole, because there's lots of green space. There's a lot of open space here, more than you would normally see in one of these. There's plenty of room for the 48 units to go on here and still leave a half a football field between the single-family homes and that. Detrimental effects on nearby properties. Again, the single-family homes, residents concerned about their homes, as they should be. I have said in my 30 years doing this, either from your side of the dais or mine, when we have neighbors that don't care, we've got a city in trouble. I appreciate the fact that the neighbors care here. But what you are obligated to do, I believe under Kansas law, is compare RP4 zoning to CP2 zoning, not RP4 to vacant lot. And that's what you're being asked to do. Would a vacant lot be less detrimental than the RP4? I think everybody would probably say yes. But that's not what the test is. The test is RP4 zoning versus a C2 use, and you know the uses in your C2 district. The proposed amendment corrects an error isn't relevant here. Length of property has been vacant, I mentioned that. Adequacy of current facilities, everything is there, sewer, water, all the things you need for proposal. Conformity with the comprehensive plan, Austin went through that very well. You should look at the comprehensive plan before you come into a community and ask for a use, and certainly before you ask for a rezoning. And they did. And the comprehensive plan says this is a mixed-use residential district, which includes multifamily, medium density and higher density. And this would generally be considered a medium density use. Hardship if the application is denied. I'll let Mr. Holland speak to that on behalf of the owner. But what do you have if you own this property? You haven't been able to sell it for 22 years as C2. Now you're turned down on an RP4, which is your only other alternative. You can't have residential. There's no interest for commercial. That's a hardship on a property owner. And your zoning administrator has recommended approval of this, which is one of the final criteria under the golden consideration. So we're asking that you allow a private property owner that Mr. Holland will speak to sell and develop his land that he's held on to for over 20 years and can't develop under the current zone in a way that's consistent with your comprehensive plan. And as Austin mentioned, as you study this and you go, we don't like rezoning C2 to RP4. I get that. Under your own zoning code, this should never have been C2 because it's not supposed to be next to single family. Now, single family came after the original zoning, but your code says C2 should not be near residential districts. It doesn't say that on RP4. So you're really being more consistent with your code, both comprehensive plan and zoning code, with this proposal. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Curtis Holland. I'm an attorney. My address is 900 West 48th Place, Suite 900, Kansas City, Missouri 64112. Thank you for hearing us tonight. I know you've already heard a lot, but I thought I'd give you a perspective from the landowner's perspective anyway. And I would like to introduce my clients, Fred and Linda Sudert, who are here in the audience in the back. And as Mr. Measle mentioned, it's oftentimes we don't hear about the actual landowner and the hardship that they would face if this doesn't go through. And so I'm going to speak to that just a little bit. I don't want to take up a whole lot of your time. They've owned the property for more than 50 years here. They've lived in Spring Hill for more than 50 years and have owned the property since 1986. So not quite 50 years, but they've been here a long, long time is the point. So they're vested and residents of Spring Hill lifelong. Farmers have raised cattle in this community. And again, bought this property in 1986. The zoning of the land to C2, it was some 2 decades ago. And we talked a little bit heard a little bit about how, well, it's been here for, a long, long time and nothing has happened on it. I think Commissioner Sly, you mentioned, well, what if we zone this to RP4 and then nothing happens on it? Well, it's exactly what happened here, is you rezoned it, not you all, but it happened to get zoned to C2, and it sat there for decades. And it will continue to sit here for decades if we don't change it to something that can be used. And that's what's being offered here tonight, is to put it to a use that, by all accounts, is consistent with the comprehensive plan, meets the zoning regulations, is a needed use for the property. I think the impacts that have been, we've heard from in terms of traffic and maybe other, have been addressed. They seem to have done everything they can to address those issues with regard to traffic, moving access away from Jefferson and so on and so forth, and, taking off the balconies, just doing what they can to help mitigate what are perceived impacts from the residents. But as Mr. Musel said, in zoning in Kansas, it's a legal process, and my client has rights. And they have the right to develop the land, they have the right to sell the land as well. And I understand that there's some folks who don't necessarily want it, but, the Kansas law says very clearly, hey, we don't decide or make these kind of decisions based on what the immediate neighbors think about it. And it's something you can take into consideration. I'm not denying that. But to override all the other factors and what is in the best interest of the city, because we have some residents who don't like it necessarily. And I'm not sure, I don't want to, say anything negative about kind of the perception, but if we were to build C2 uses here, I mean, it's pretty clear that there would be significantly more hard impacts to those residents in terms of traffic. Traffic would be 4 times higher if it was commercial. Lighting, noise, smell, all hours of the day, frankly. So I'm not sure that when they say this is a better use and we really want C2 here, what they're really saying to my client is, we don't want you to do anything with the property, because you can't do anything with the property if it's zoned C2. We've already tested it. It's been sitting here for 22 plus years. There's a whole bunch of commercial zoning just across the street that could be developed that hasn't yet been developed. So it's not like we're going to eliminate opportunities for commercial, although frankly, commercial uses, retail zoning is not something that's been pursued much recently. The only commercial activity that we see in the market is for fast food, commercial, convenience store type. It's not neighborhood retail or any of that kind of stuff that you might think about. So I'd like you to think about my client too as well in all this, because there's a big hardship on them. And essentially what you're doing is denying them any use of their property if you fail to rezone it to something. I think RP4 is an appropriate use here. It's a transition use. It's very common in planning and zoning to transition between single family and more intense uses, which, the commercial zoning to the north. So at the end of the day, I would like you to take into consideration my client's interests, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Earl. Austin, do you have anything else?
I'm available for questions.
Okay.
Really quick before you all ask questions, I would like, so the way that the rezoning statute works, when it's remanded to you all, you have to address the conditions that the city council's asked you to address. So Austin, would you mind talking about the ability to adjust this plan from 3 to 2 stories and the ability or consideration of moving the trash receptacle from that southwest corner of the spot?
Yeah, so I'll start with the easier one, moving the trash enclosure. It wasn't shown on that plan. As a result of the neighborhood meeting that was held on Tuesday, the neighbors would prefer it being on the north side. So it would be in the same kind of general position, but we would like to move it to the north end of that. And I could go back and pop it up there, but essentially the north end of that T turnaround for the fire truck. Again, a lot of that is going to be subject to approval from the fire marshal and making sure that it meets all of those codes. But we don't have an issue with moving it. So we're more than happy to take it out of that location and place it elsewhere. And it appears right now that the primary location for that would be to the north. Adjusting from 3-story to 2-story, I briefly addressed this in the location portion of this. I think it's a consideration to take, but again, following the comprehensive plan to the way that it was written is that in this zoning district, in this future land use district, it clearly states that if there's a residential uses in mixed use commercial areas, the idea is that they are 3 stories. It even says, 2 stories are for areas designated residential, 3 stories are designated for areas as mixed-use commercial. So I appreciate the comment from the city staff. We looked at it, and to Spencer's point earlier, again, if you chop a floor off the building, you're adding floor area or you're adding that floor area that you chopped off, you're putting it in another building somewhere else, or you're extending the floor area of an existing building. So we did look at it as best we could to see if there were options to make changes, but from the letter of the comprehensive plan perspective, 3 stories is really what's appropriate for the area. Any other considerations?
Good evening, Matt Gillum. I'm one of the managing partners of Overland Property Group. Appreciate your time this evening. Just wanted to cover real quickly the financing portion of this. We are greenlit, so we have the financing in place from front to back. We could even entertain, if you want to put a stipulation on moving forward, timeline, groundbreaking. I don't see a scenario where we're not under construction on this by April of next year.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
When you did talk about, I mean, part of it is, one of the things was the privacy. And so if you're not adjusting a 3-story to a 2-story, because that's part of the privacy, because they felt like it's so high. I don't know that the answer is getting rid of balconies. I mean, I'm just gonna say that if this somehow gets approved, I don't know that that's, should be an option. I can't imagine, I mean, I wouldn't wanna move, even if it's a young professional, if I were young. I would not wanna move into an apartment that didn't have a patio or something on it. I think you're gonna then limit who's gonna move into those. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Can you put them on the other side of the building? I mean, something, because it just doesn't seem, I mean, I don't know who would want to live there.
So we do have developments that don't have balconies right now. It's more of a marketplace thing. One of the stipulations for the program that we operate in is that every unit has the same general set of amenities. So removing balconies from one side kind of forces us to remove balconies from the other side. Again, it is a consideration, but we're more than willing to make that change, and it's been done before. So it's not a major impact to the marketability of the property or anything along those lines. Again, it's a good faith effort. If that's not a stipulation that you want to move forward, again, we're trying to do the best we can. So we can kind of leave that back into your.
In Austin, I have a question about that 3-story to 2-story. So
Yeah.
you're saying if you went down, you'd have to move the property out, and it'd probably be closer to the residence, correct?
So generally speaking, you would have to do something with that floor area. So most likely what that would equate to is either another building or the buildings get longer. So if the buildings get longer, again, you have spacing issues you have to work with. So I think it's a fair assessment to say if you drop a floor down, you're going to move the buildings closer to the residents on the south property line.
And if I could just cover the patios and balconies real quick, because I think it's a great point. We're not willing to compromise the end product. So we don't sell our communities. We don't do it. That's just not something we do. So my business partner and I are long-term holds. It's not our business model. Our business model is to develop, stay in these communities. I grew up in Salina, Kansas, where my business partner is from. Austin's also from. We live in an office in Leawood now, but small town relationships are something we built this company on. So Steamboat Springs, Colorado doesn't ask you to come back and build another community after the first because you didn't do what you said you were going to do. You didn't build quality. Same thing. We're now developing a third there. We've done this all over the country. It's really our business model is to get in, form relationships, and be long-term partners with communities. So to your point, chopping off patios, balconies to get one deal done is not something we would do if we believed that it would change the character of the community.
So was the taking off of the balconies due to privacy issues?
So we don't perceive that there is a privacy issue. Again, these
What brought it up,
buildings.
I guess?
So there were comments made at the last planning commission meeting about the height of the buildings, and through conversations with community members over the past few weeks, that is a comment that was raised.
Right,
So-
that was just for the privacy.
Yes, there's no like design perspective that the city imposes that says you must have some sort of privacy like mitigation. The privacy mitigation at the city level is held at the screening and buffering requirements. So the landscaping and any sort of like privacy fencing that's included. So it's a concern that was brought up. Again, it's a good faith effort from us to try and, resolve a perceived issue. But it's not something that is like objectively, quantified from any report that's generated that there is a privacy
They're
issue.
not that big, it's not like they're.
So this picture here on the bottom is actually from 35 feet up off the ground. So that is the visual sight line of the third floor of these units facing the homeowners, literally exactly at the closest spot to their residences. Our intention is not to remove any landscaping that currently exists and work around that. We don't have any intention to come in. We're not one of those developers that says, let's just scrape it all, it's easier. If trees exist now, we want to go through and do a survey and say, this tree is a good, healthy tree. We want to leave it. We would never intend to chop out a naturally occurring buffer that's already there. We're going to add to it. We're going to make it better.
Yeah, what you see there would be the parking lot, right? I mean, that's what you're
Yep,
looking at.
correct. Except for like you said, there's a buffer, as you can kind of see on those upper photos. But again, from a half a football field away at a minimum, looking from 35 feet in the air, you're really not looking down from an angle perspective. There's certainly that perceived 3 stories, but honestly, there's a home in this community that borders this site that has a walkout basement. The roof line of that house, by the engineer's rough estimates, is not more than a few feet difference from the roof line of this house after you take into site grading and everything.
Yeah, this site actually sits slightly below what is existing to the south, and it grades from west to east, again sloping downward.
So there's no intention of taking out those trees.
So there's no intention of taking out trees where it's not impacted by, again, we have to provide parking for the development, so if we have to take out some of like I would imagine some of the smaller ones are in
But
the
the
way.
big ones,
But the big ones that don't need to move, again, there's a 25-foot buffer between kind of what you see on the top right corner from the rear edge of the parking lot. There's a 25-foot buffer from that parking lot to the rear property line. So 25 foot of trees, all that stuff will stay.
Any other questions before we hear from the public?
oh, I do.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
my question goes back to Ms. Dominic following up with the balconies. So aesthetically, I have this vision in my head that now we're going to have a cracker box there just with flat sides. I don't know that I want a balcony over my backyard, as well as I don't know that I want to look at a building now without a balcony that you're not proposing anything else to make it aesthetically pleasing there. But go back to those balconies with me. I just have a picture of a flat-sided box, and it just does not appear that that's a good thing either.
Do you guys have any, it's
Yep.
RP4, so do you have any pictures of what you
Sure.
were?
Yeah, they got a picture right
So this right here is very similar style building that we're proposing. As you can see, we try to work, well, I should say, we work with a lot of different materials because we think differentiating materials is something that really helps these products. I'll promise you that architecture, as everybody in our entire firm will tell you, is one of the foremost things that kind of gets me going. My grandfather was an architect, my father's an architect, my brother's an architect, my cousin's an architect, and they're the architects of this community. So it's something that you better believe is one of the things that I care most about. So as you can see from this perspective, does it change the look? Well, a little bit, but removing those patios and balconies, you're just going to continue that indentation. We're not going to pop it out and make it a box. It is going to move. Intention for good designed multifamily is for it to look like it is larger homes. It's got to move. It's got to have roof line. I'm in agreement. I drive down the street all the time and I see other people's multifamily and I think, gosh, that's one of the worst looking buildings ever. It's a big box. There's no architectural elements to it whatsoever. There's no stone like there is on this. So those things are extremely important to us. Those windows you see there, again, these aren't your cheap, little windows. These are, 6.5 foot tall windows. Those are huge. And the reason is you're bringing the natural light in there. So the other thing that we intentionally do is if you do drop the patios and balconies, that side door that exists, you turn into basically a Juliet balcony. So then you introduce natural air, natural light. So we're not just saying, take the patios, balconies off and we're going to bump it out. Those patios, balconies go away, but you keep the movement of the building.
And to clarify,
Forgive me, I don't know what a Juliet balcony is.
Juliet balcony is the doors sweep in. So basically it creates, open air like you have a patio. Your whole living room has, kind of that feel. So you can do that and it actually creates very visually appealing stuff. We're doing it in Steamboat Springs, Colorado right now, and actually the residents prefer it.
Okay, thank you.
The one thing I will add, with patios and balconies, as much as, with anybody's house, you have stuff. Everybody has stuff. We all have too much of it. So with patios, balconies, I understand, I think from the residents' concern, there's not only the peering in, but there's a lot easier from a management perspective, as much as we police, which we police very hard. Can somebody put their bike up there? Well, yeah, probably a day later, they're forced to remove it per our management regulations. But it does provide actually a cleaner look on the building, because we can, control the entire exterior of this property. It's all professionally landscape managed, etc. So really, from that intent perspective, you are going to get a very, nice look. It really won't detract.
And one thing to clarify too, this building in this picture is in the same program that we are operating under for this development. So for all intents and purposes, architecturally, they are very high quality, and it will look, again, of similar quality to something like this. It's the same program.
To help Ms. Squire, sorry, Debbie, to help Ms. Squire, the original plan that had balconies, was it these same types of balconies we're looking at where they almost cut into the building, or were the balconies that stick out of the building?
I believe, we do not have our architect in attendance tonight, but I do believe that they were cut into the face of the building. They weren't extended out.
They're exactly that.
Yeah.
I think that looks a lot better. And I honestly, if you cut those out, a 6-foot window, if I really wanna look into somebody's yard, I'm going to.
Well, that's what
I mean,
I'm
with the
saying,
window.
There's still windows right there, you can still see out.
Can you take the windows out?
I was like, that seems like a little bit more of an extreme.
Can you remind me of there's two buildings and there's a playhouse. Can you remind me exactly of how many, 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom and 3 bedroom? I can't remember.
Yeah, so there are 12 one-bedroom, 24 two-bedroom, and 12 three-bedroom units in this development. Generally evenly split. 48 units.
48.
Okay. For full disclosure too, I don't know if, since it's not a public hearing, if we have to, but I have had a conversation with a resident, and there was several issues brought up that, there are issues as well as mine, as well as council. What is happening with the 48 units? We are all under the belief that this is a application process for income controlled units. Is that still the plan?
Yes, so this is an affordable housing development. It runs through a program that income qualifies a subset of the units. It's not all of the units. There are 39 income qualified units, and there are 9 market rate units for this development. I'm more than happy to go into the details there. I think there is a misconception around what that actually looks like. So I'm more than happy to kind of speak to that. Just want
You
to.
should, because I don't think Cindy was at that.
Yeah, and real quick, I just want to remind the commission, so rezoning decisions cannot turn on what the price point or the control of this is. These could be leased out for $10,000 a unit, or they could be free, and the question doesn't necessarily change whether it should be rezoned to RP4. So
I understand that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that because I think what Mr. Mitchell was going to say is, I have not, to be honest and frank with everyone, I've had surgery, so I am struggling to get back out to work in public. So if I missed that information at another meeting, forgive me, but I also don't want to not have a full understanding of what it is. I always thought that it was all 48 units. I never knew that there was a differential between a subset and another set in the buildings itself, that there would be a difference. And I just want to make sure I'm being clear on what is coming in.
Sure. And again, this is Matt. I'm happy to answer that. Generally, with this program, it was a Reagan-era program enacted in 1986 to incentivize the private sector to develop what the government's never been good at, quite frankly. I think we can all agree on that. What happens here is through this financing mechanism for affordable housing, we go out and we pursue this. It is highly competitive, it's hyper competitive. And in this case, we received one of only 10 in the entire state out of 50 applications. It's a big deal. There's a lot of research out there about how much money this brings into a community. But generally what happens is we take these credits and we go sell them to an investor. This investor is a Wells Fargo, it's a Bank of America, it is WNC, maybe it's Raymond James. It's somebody like that who has a CRA type need and they need to invest in something like this. They're doing it for very minimal returns. But what they're doing in exchange for that investment that meets certain criteria of theirs is they are prepaying for basically a 10-year stream of federal tax credits. And we take that amount of equity and we take it to the closing table. And for that, we have a way lower perm debt. So which is why you're able to make these things look honestly nicer than most other communities, is because we're going to the closing table with 70, 80, maybe 90% of the overall development budget in equity. So we only have 10 to 15 to 20% total perm debt. So we have a less debt load. For doing this, and as part of the program, we agree to keep these units affordable for a period of 30 years. One of the things that is great with this program is having different types of units, different affordability. It's no different than a community in a neighborhood where you don't know how much money your neighbor makes. You don't know how much money your neighbor down the street who's on fixed income makes. So this is no different. Having a diverse set of folks that can live in this community is quite frankly the best thing for it.
And to add to that, Matt's points are perfect across the board. The reason that we decided to not income qualify some of the units was to highlight that there is no difference in amenities between the offerings in the units for the development. So we are not allowed to offer different things between income qualified units and non-income qualified units. I think it's probably no secret at this point that there was a lot of community input when information like that had been released to the public, again, through public hearings. We were back in front of Planning Commission at the beginning of the year, in front of City Council as well. Again, there's an education aspect that comes to some of this with, really explaining how the program works. But at the end of the day, we're trying to show that it doesn't matter, like the intent of this is to offer the same amenities that any other development would. We're giving people that have, candidly lower incomes, people that are in normal workforce jobs, an ability to have a place to live. And in a place like Spring Hill where home prices continue to elevate, we have studies that show, and I can bring up the Miami County Economic Development Report. Average home sale in Spring Hill was $450,000 this year. Last year was $400,000. The year before that, it was $350,000. It's just not attainable for a lot of people. So the decision to, change the income qualifications between, April and now, a lot of that's based on us trying to make this, the best community that it possibly can be, and really show that there's no difference between any of the units. They're all the same.
And I believe last time you talked to, one more, you also mentioned that, they can't just not have a decent job. They have to have a reasonable income, right? Yeah, I think you did discuss that, and Cindy missed that. Was that, I believe they did have to have a reasonable income to get into these, and
Yes, so
report that they do have a good, steady pay of, job.
Well, and I guess my other point of all of the questioning is, one, I missed it. Two, and I think Austin alluded to that comment, this is a plan, this is an RPP, and you guys that have all sat on this board years with me know that I ask, if we're scratching your back and giving you a P, what are you scratching the city of Spring Hill's back with? And I think Austin answered that by saying he was giving us the affordable housing. But so with that comment, it was like, but wait a minute, I'm understanding now that they're not all 48 units being. So
hang on, Austin.
I just want to make sure that I'm understanding.
Yeah, so, and again, I understand, Ms. Squire, from a point of wanting to know what this development is. Again, the criteria you're looking at for rezoning, none of those factors, and we heard Mr. Musel go through those. I'm happy to go through them too. None of those turn on that, and I understand, I'm telling you not to ask, I am cautioning you all, that's not part of your decision-making process. It could be one, it could be all of them. That won't change what it is. I will also say, we also don't award RP4s on a scratching each other's backs quid pro quo situation. RP4s are also beneficial to the city in and of themselves, in that the city has more control over what's going in there because it's a planned district, and it gives that zoning teeth that lets us do specific requirements that wouldn't otherwise necessarily have to be there under an R4. So as a city, we like the RP4 because it lets us ask for things and put in these conditions that if we had them go to an R4, they could say, no, thank you, and we'd have no way to stop it.
Right, and that's the other reason I asked about the balconies. I mean,
Right.
because we can have the teeth with a P.
Right, you all could make, I mean, I'm hearing comments about balconies. You can ask them to put the balconies back in. That was something, and maybe, we'll let the citizens talk too, and if you all have thoughts, feel free to let the commission know so they can make an informed decision. You can make that part of your RP4. That's the beauty of RP there, so, I don't know why I said it like that. But that's the beauty of the planned part of it.
One last clarifying point. So there was a comment made at the very beginning that I don't think I actually addressed. In terms of actually moving forward, there is a place in service deadline. To Matt's point earlier about, putting a restriction on when we need to break down or when we need to break ground, the funding is secured. So this is approved from the state level. So in terms of us rezoning and not having it done, there is a place in service deadline that is, contractually, that we're contractually obligated to. So there isn't really a concern about whether or not this project will move forward if it is approved, because the funding has already been allocated and the place in service deadlines have already been established. So
Okay.
I did want to clarify that.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to move on to the public comments. Even though we're not required to on this, I would like to have the public comment. We're going to limit it to 2 minutes per person, and just ask you to keep it civil and address the new items that have been brought forward if that's possible. So please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Lynn Lewis, and I live at 22364 St. Francis Street, which is located on the southeast corner of the proposed apartment complex. Our house is 60 feet from the property line. And I did attend the last hearing and also the council meeting. And at the council meeting, it was pointed out that in other cities where there are similar projects by this development, the apartments do not back up to single-family residential areas. There's fields as buffers, maybe proposed homes, but not our situation. And neither Savannah Park nor Spring Hill Plaza Apartments, which are located in the north part of the town here near the post office, neither of those back up to a single-family residential area. They have fields behind them. And the Black Hawk Apartments located near Price Chopper have a road that separates them from surrounding homes. And I'm asking that you give personal consideration to those of us who reside in Feather Ridge, especially to us whose property will border the complex. We will directly be impacted by the excess noise, excess lights, and increase in traffic volume, which the corner of 223 and Victory may not be able to handle. The complex will not add value to our homes and may make them harder to sell in the future. In other words, even without incentives, the developer will make money, but the homeowners will not reap any financial reward. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Next, I got 13 names up here, so, but you don't have to speak even if you signed up.
As he walks up, I'm just going to let you all know, I'm keeping time. You're going to hear an alarm go off at 1 minute and 30 seconds. It'll give you a 30-second warning. I think we all get startled by alarms because it makes us think we have to wake up. So apologies in advance for that.
Robert McCray, 22366 South Madison. I also spoke when this was first brought up, spoke at the city council meeting. I was going to bring up Blackhawk. She already talked about it. It was commercial when we built our house 20 years ago. We understand it's commercial. We understand what commercial is. We moved there with the understanding that that is commercial. We don't have a problem with that. We have designed our backyard to deal with that. Austin has been very good. Had a conversation with him the other day. I appreciate him letting us speak. It's unfortunate that it happened after you guys didn't approve the planning the first time and that nobody spoke to us before that. The picture that they showing the backyard, when all the trees, when they were talking about not cutting down those trees, I really appreciate that. Those are my trees. Those are trees in my backyard that are the mature trees that we're not talking about not cutting down. The trees on the berm are mostly dead. There's really nothing there to salvage. The picture and the angle the picture was showed at is the best light for the developer in showing what looks into neighbors' backyards. To the right of that is my neighbor. He has nothing that it's gonna block the development from his site view. And all up and down the line, it looks different. That is the best picture you could possibly take from 35 feet. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Spencer, I'm keeping track up here too, so, but I don't use an alarm, so, because I'll give them a little leeway.
All right, cool. I'll lay off. You guys, only one of you gets to hear that now tonight. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jeff Armstrong. My family lives at 22350 South Madison Street, directly on the south end of this proposed development. I'm getting a lot more comfortable in doing this. This is about the fourth time that I've spoken to either you or the city council about this. My message has not changed. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I just want to continue to say, not only is the developer and the applicant trying to pound that round or square peg in a round hole. They brought two large hammers in the form of their attorneys, which in my opinion is a threat to you guys. That's a threat. They've mentioned you guys are legally mandated to do this. Well, if you look at that Golden versus the City of Overland Park, read those criteria very carefully and look at it from a resident's point of view, not just a resident of this neighborhood, which I am, so I'm biased, absolutely, but look at it from a resident that might be wanting to come to this community. And this fits none of that criteria. So I just really want you to take a real close look at that. And I definitely want you to recommend that this does not get rezoned. This gets rezoned into an RP4. This is not, we're all for, I don't think there's anybody here that will deny that affordable housing is needed. This is just the wrong plot of land for it. We're shoehorning it in there. We have we brought up many different recommendations of different places within the surrounding area that would have been much more advantageous for everybody involved and much more fitting for everybody involved. If you look at, there's also Blackhawk that was brought up. Again, I'll just restate this and then I'll be done. But at Blackhawk, there is a definite buffer section of a road on all sides of it between the multifamily units, the 3-story multifamily units, the parking lot, the constant traffic in and out, all the light pollution, noise pollution from the surrounding single-family dwellings. So I'll leave you at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Hi, I'm Susie Cheatham. I'm at 21061 West 224th Street. I'm a Feather Ridge resident, although my house will not back up to this proposed project. I ask that you all truly consider the comprehensive plan that was done, I believe, 2007-ish, somewhere around there, and maybe consider that our city should update one as well. And I guarantee in 2007, myself or anyone else couldn't have ever fathomed the growth and the demand that our small town is getting right now. While I can appreciate the developers' love and zest to do this project, I don't appreciate them standing here with their attorneys appealing to fear. It doesn't equate. And I want to also just state that we talk about the landowner's hardship. I've lived in my house for 20 years. While there has been, on and off some for sale signs, it's not been on the market for 22 years. And the tax bill on that is currently $25 a year. So if we are going to consider his hardship of marketability, I also asked the question, was the landowner the person who asked to zone it C2 originally? If we're going to be concerned with his marketability, which we should, we also need to be concerned with everybody else's. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Susie. And just to put a shameless plug in for the comprehensive plan, we are in the process of doing a new one right now. So anybody who was interested in that or getting involved in the process, we would strongly encourage you to fill out some of the surveys.
And to make it even more shameless, there are QR codes coming in and out of the building that you can take a picture of and get involved in that. So thank
Sorry,
you for that
I-
segue.
Not to make light, but we are in the process of doing that.
Tim Barrett, 22376 South Madison Street. I'm not going to reiterate everything my neighbors have already been through. I agree with everything they've said. A couple more things to take into consideration. The traffic study that was done didn't consider the lot that you just approved to become heavy equipment that's going to be up and down 223rd, or the housing development that's already been approved directly to the east of this. You're going to have significant traffic increase from both of those that needs to be considered as well. There's still a safety issue coming on and off of 223rd at those two intersections. I couldn't tell you how many times we've almost been hit. You cannot see when the sun's coming up or the sun's going down. It's a dangerous intersection, and adding more traffic to it's going to be a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Hello, Ryan Ratzliff, 22379 South Jefferson Street. My family, we live on the southwest side of this development. A couple things something that I brought up last time was the foot traffic, where people from this apartment were going to be able to walk. Adding a sidewalk doesn't really change where they're able to walk. It's still right through our neighborhood. I think my biggest concern with all of this was how big of a surprise it was to everybody. I know that I wouldn't have bought my house knowing that this was an option. I've heard that from a lot of other people. So changing this to residential for this project to me doesn't make sense. And I don't see how that's fair to everybody in the community or in the neighborhood right there. Yeah, I guess there's nothing else I can really say other than I strongly I'm very passionate about this, and my family's now considering moving, making career changes. The rest of our lives are changing because of this. So just really hope you guys stick with what you did last time and don't change your minds on this. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Julie Fishburne, live at 20880 West 224th. Our cul-de-sac backs up to the proposed development. I appreciate my neighbor Tim talking about the traffic study. I did read the traffic study myself, and the historical crash data says, and I'll just read it to you, historical crash data for the 223rd Street, Jefferson Street, and Victory Street corridors adjacent to the development was not obtained. Based on the lack of intersections, good point, driveway density and good sight lines, which it contradicts prior, at most driveways, a significant accident history is not expected. I find that really hard to believe. I think everybody that lives in the area knows many times you can barely get down 223rd because there's so many fire trucks and police officers because there's been a really bad accident. At Webster and 223rd, Victory and 223rd as well. My concern, and I've talked a lot about the foot traffic, it seems a little irresponsible to put a sidewalk along 223rd with the way that it exists now. The infrastructure really just doesn't support it. We're implying that it's safe for children to walk down the sidewalk along 223rd. I would never have my children do that. That's so dangerous. The other thing is the school bus. We have pickup in our neighborhood for elementary, middle, and high school, all three grade levels or grade bands. And so to say that adding 48 units is not going to, what did it is? Not impact traffic, I don't know how that works. The location of the school bus stops, I don't know who chooses where those are at, but I think we have to consider whether they're on Victory or they're on Jefferson and they allow access through a gate or on the sidewalk so children can stand at a bus stop in our neighborhood and catch the bus. Sounds great, but when they open the doors and load the buses, what happens to the traffic when the stop sign's out? It's backed up this way, it's backed up toward 223rd, it's now spilling off onto 223rd, and now we've got traffic sitting on 223rd. So talk about dangerous too. So I just wanted to, we hadn't really discussed that. Those are like the little things about things like this, plans, that people don't think about until it actually happens. And you're like, oh, wow, look how this impacts so many different things. So I just would implore you to please vote down the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Kristen Feeback. I'm at 21081 West 224th Street. I just want to echo what a lot of people up here said that live in our neighborhood. I know you all have a very important decision, and I just hope that you stand firm in the decision that you made last time. The other thing is, not only tonight, but just in general around the neighborhood, people were saying that they weren't notified. And I actually heard something about that the developer was actually discouraged from coming to the neighbors and having a meeting before all of this. So I would just ask if there's a process or a procedure that could be developed between the city council and the commissioner that, or this committee here, that something's established just so people can be heard. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sean Slider. I'm at 21023 West 225th Street. We just moved in a couple months ago. But I'm going to address this on the engineering architecture side because that's where I live in my world. And first of all, I know the utilities coming into this neighborhood can't handle a development like that. We already lose water pressure as it is with the existing houses. Commercial in that location is much less impact on those utilities than a 48 unit housing development would be. And also in my past dealings with jurisdictions in all 48 states, I haven't seen any renderings of this building on this site with the materials they're actually going to use. And we normally have to provide sightline renderings where it's shown what the sightlines from the different areas are to the surrounding houses. So I just implore that you don't rezone it until you at least see that stuff.
Thank you, Sean.
My name is Mark Pospisil. I live at 20895 West 225th Terrace. I'm at a bit disadvantage, I'm afraid, because I just moved in less than 3 weeks ago and had no idea anything like that happening. I wouldn't be standing before you tonight had I known that. And I think there are a lot of people like myself who wouldn't be here if they had known that something like this was proposed in their neighborhood before they moved in. I came to Spring Hill because of the reputation of Spring Hill as being progressive and building a community that is growing, and the growth is coming this way. I didn't know about any of this happening until I got a letter yesterday in the mail telling me there was a meeting Tuesday night. Well, it was postmarked Monday afternoon. You know, you don't have to be a genius to figure out that that letter isn't going to get there before Tuesday. I find that a bit suspect. I'm a bit disturbed that that kind of organization is going on. I see a lot of fix-it Band-Aids put on things. Oh, we'll do it this way. No, we'll change it. We'll do it this way. But let's put that aside. Let's talk about We brought it up here, the sensitivity to the people. Let's talk about the sensitivity to the people. Let's talk about the emotional distress that the people in Feather Ridge are gonna go through because of this. And it's not gonna be a 1 day, 2 day, 3 day thing. It's gonna be a lot longer than that. It's gonna be no night's sleep, believe me, it will. I lived in a community where there was low income, low subsidized governmental housing. I can tell you the impact that had on the community. Those houses did not increase in value, they went down. I was told yesterday that those prices are not gonna be affected at all. You know, your house is gonna be worth every bit as much. That's what I was told when I made a phone call yesterday. I can also tell you firsthand information what happened to school achievement in that community. Those are concerns I have. We want to talk about sensitivity to people. Let's talk about sensitivity to the community. If the perception out there is, well, Spring Hill is the place to go if you want low-cost, governmental subsidized housing at half the cost, people like myself probably aren't going to come here, but I'll guarantee you, you will have a lot of them coming. I just think some serious thought needs to be given to what's happening with the people. I don't care about the dollar bills. I don't care about balconies. Let's talk about the people. And I think that's what I'd ask for you to focus on. That's what I think the people in the development would want you to focus on. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark.
I'm not on your list.
That's okay.
Okay. Scott Tenor, 20925 West 225th Street. Wow, Mark, love that. That's the passion that people have around here. You know, what was it, $35,000 property tax that we're gonna generate over each year? Okay, this C2, it's failed. I mean, these poor folks holding on this property for 20 years, you know, and nothing's happened. It's failed. That's a residential area, okay? So let's just get it out there. Can you put 10 houses there? You know, what's your property tax? $7,700. Put 10 houses on there. How much do you get each year then? $70,000, twice what you would get from that house, from that compound. We call it affordable housing. It's low income, okay? If you took that over there and put it by Boulder Creek, you'd have 20 more times people here complaining about it, all right? So what I'm saying is, yeah, affordable housing is needed, okay? But not in a residential area there where you've got $350,000, $450,000 homes, okay? You know, I was told 2 nights ago, well, it's shown to increase property values. Every article that I've read says that it lowers the property of wealthier neighborhoods. Now, we're not wealthy. We're far from wealthy. $350,000, $400,000, $450,000 homes, we're not wealthy, okay? It raises the value of a low-income area. That's proven, okay? Affordable housing does. But to put it in a upper middle class neighborhood and then expect us to believe that it's gonna raise our values, like Mark just said, he wouldn't have moved here, you know? I would not, if I was turning down Jefferson and coming to look at that house and my wife said, what's that? And we saw it was, you know, affordable housing, low-income housing, we wouldn't have bought there. So I think we all need to take that into consideration, okay? Change that C2 to residential, put 10 houses there, double your property taxes you're gonna get here, and for God's sake, improve damn 223rd Street. Oh, and one other thing. Whoever approved Victory to the south to get repaid, thank you.
That'd be the city council. Thank you, Scott. Anybody else?
Dallas James, 22456 St. Francis Street. I'm going to help out something, and I'm going to give the pat on the back for Austin. As far as some things, I will tell you reasons why you guys did not get half the stuff delivered to your house and you guys got it in the mail. Because I'm the one that stopped him from putting every one of those envelopes in your guys' mail illegally.
Which is against the law.
I'm just telling you.
What I got.
Well, I'm just saying, the reason why we all got him on Wednesday versus Tuesday or before his meeting was I legally stopped him and told him he's breaking a federal law. So, I'm not against this place, just not in the right spot. So, as far as I'm concerned, he told me he didn't know that he was breaking the law. Well, obviously, he has two attorneys back there backing him up. He has a little bit more brains than that, right? That's all I have to say. Please reconsider.
Thank you, Dallas. Anybody else?
Dennis Summerall, 20843 West 224th Street. First question I got, everybody keeps talking about 3 stories. Is it 3 stories or 3 floors? Can't the first floor be at ground level? So that way you only got 2 stories above ground level. Okay. The next question, we do all of our numbers, determinations based off of what 223rd Street would do. But is that based off of the way it is now? Or if a 223rd Street is brand new, which of those numbers based off of? Because 223rd Street is gonna fall in the ditch here next 6 months. It's already cracking off the side of it. And last but not least, they talked about getting their money back. All the people that came in here early paid for their houses with the idea they're gonna get a pool and a clubhouse, which is part of their cost of buying that house. They didn't get anything back. But evidently the gentleman who has got this land got it back. So there's a big, what happened there? And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Any other comments? All right, we'll move on then.
Real quick, before you guys talk, I want to clarify a few things that came up there just so that your conversation can be as productive as possible. As it relates to traffic, we did meet, and we spoke with Chief Henson this week and kind of had her give us some statistics and also have a discussion with our officers about 223rd in this intersection. So the collisions at 223rd and Victory area, so far this year there have been 4. Last year there were 6. One of those was an animal involved. She wanted to point that out just because, obviously those are a little more random. They could happen anywhere. And then in 2021 there were 2. She did want to compare at 223rd and 169. Those numbers going back from 2023, 2 years, it's 13, 13, and 6. So as far as the density of traffic there in accidents, it is significantly lower. She also, and again, this is completely anecdotal, I'm just telling you to give you as much information as we have. The officers didn't feel like this intersection was necessarily a trouble intersection or that this stretch of 223rd was one of their necessary areas of concern as far as traffic control and accidents. And then I did want to just briefly touch on, I think Ms. Feebeck mentioned some issues about notice. So notice was sent out. The state statute sets out how we do that, and we follow state statute on that. Notice for tonight is going to be different because it isn't a public hearing. So it goes differently than the last month's meeting when we had notification go out to everyone within 200 feet of this when they live in the city or 1,000 feet of it if they are outside the city. So those portions of Miami County that this would abut. I think that's the 2 things I wanted to hit. We're obviously here to help you answer questions and talk as we go, but I wanted to clear those up so that I know traffic's going to be a big hit, and that's something that we tried to get you some more information on from our police department.
Well, and do you mind clarifying the traffic? You might be able to clarify some of this. The traffic study typically does, include if that development went in there, how many more, cars are going to come in, and they do simulations on that. So it should be, as the growth comes in, how that, is it predicted to affect, right?
Yes. Yes.
So it's not just as it is now, they kind of try to portray, with these models, how it's gonna affect in the future. Now, I used to live over on 220th Street, and I agree 100% that it's too dangerous on that area, especially Victory. I know you made a comment that they did the chip seal on Victory, which was very nice. There's still no sidewalks there. There's the aquatic center over there. I brought it up last time. I'm still worried about that. I know that the residents there might have kids running over to the aquatic center. There's gonna be I think there will be a lot more now if the apartments go in. And that's a kind of a dangerous, that's the only way they can get there is through, ride a bike across, up Victory or walk, or get somebody to drive them. So, since I used to live over there, I know that's a fact, so it's still a concern of mine on that area. I wanted to make that clear to everybody here. But go ahead. I think you had some more things you wanted to clarify.
No, I mean, those were the big two. There were a couple comments as far as attorneys and appealing to fear. As an attorney, I'll just say I didn't take it that way. I get to say that because I'm an attorney and I recognize how other attorneys speak, but I do want you to let you know, I guess, from your city attorney's perspective, I don't want to admit how often those two guys have scared me outside of this, but I wasn't necessarily getting the intimidation factor from that perspective here. So I would hope that they weren't trying to, but that's it.
Thank you. Any other questions for,
I just think unless they have big clubs and are gonna meet us outside, I'm not worried.
okay.
Okay,
Do you have your taser with you?
yeah,
Okay, all right.
no, I know karate.
Okay,
Um,
very good.
Sorry,
Nope, go
we can
ahead.
say discussion?
Yep,
Yeah.
discussion.
Um,
Discussion, questions for applicant?
Well, one thing I can't help but, again, remember and hearing all of those citizens saying, I know, there's, I don't know, some part where it says you can't consider them, but then I ask, well, why do we allow them to come here and speak? But, so I feel like we have to consider them even when we're zoning. And so many of them are saying, we knew it was gonna be commercial. We didn't know it was gonna be RP4. We didn't know there was gonna be apartments. We didn't know there was gonna be income-driven apartments. We knew it was potentially commercial. I do know some folks who live there and who built their homes there with the understanding that was gonna be a pool and a clubhouse. And, 2008 or whenever it was when we had the big, housing issue or whatever, and that kind of changed a lot of things. I know it changed things in my neighborhood as well. But,
It was supposed to be in that area?
yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so to go from, thinking that's what's gonna happen to all of a sudden you're gonna have a 3-story,
20 years later, I mean,
sorry, what?
20 years later.
Yes. But still, so follow me. So it's been undeveloped. I don't know who all these geniuses are that actually look at the zoning, cause I sure didn't when I moved in. But I saw like an empty field and I don't live there. But where we moved into, we saw cows, we saw an empty field, and I did not know, oh, you should go to the city and find out what the zoning is. We didn't do that, but what we saw was, this is where we wanna build our house or move into because this land around us is beautiful. And didn't think about could they build townhomes or whatever. I don't think most people would do that. I think that when you move into an area, you see what's there, you can't possibly imagine there's gonna be affordable housing going in of 48 units, and then you buy your house. I just don't think that that was part of it. So if we're considering just for the rezoning purpose of people who currently live there and say, we knew it was a C2, we bought our homes here, we expect to appreciate in value, because I certainly know that's what we expected. It's a good investment to buy a home. That's why people do it. It becomes part of, your retirement plan or whatever. You know that you're gonna have, double what you paid or whatever when you finally sell your home. But I think we really need to consider that. So rezoning from a C2 to an RP4, I think when we have residents who say they prefer the C2, whether it's a Culver's, a Scooters, a bank, which would have different hours. A bank isn't gonna be open all night, but certainly residents can come home at 2 a.m. and play loud music or rev their cars or, whatever would happen.
Actually, they can't. We have a city ordinance at 10 o'clock.
Can you talk to my neighbor then who has a flashlight on his head and he mows his yard sometimes?
I'm just saying, we do have a city ordinance.
Yes,
Noise ordinance at 10 PM.
doesn't always stop it from happening, right?
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you. So, I mean, those are my thoughts. I think it looks better with a balcony. Again, I'm not against that building. I'm not against the developers. I still am not convinced that this location needs to be changed to an RP4.
But they can still build on C2, correct?
No, they cannot build this.
So they can't build this on C2 unless they come to you and ask for an overlay district, which is a public hearing, and you're gonna do what you did last month again.
Yeah, we were originally told incorrectly.
Yes.
I want to clarify that, so.
Yes.
Yeah. And it comes down to the question was, and some of them alluded to this, was the C2 zoning originally incorrect? Should have been zoned something else. And you did a great job explaining some of that and digging into that. But believe me, I know that code very well. And so this is a very difficult, I think, decision for myself. I feel for the landowner too. He's been there 22 years and nobody's developed C2 there. And then I see the other side too. Should it really be zoned RP4? It's only 4 acres. And so the questions are running through my head. Can they actually develop homes there? I think it's very tough. You can do a little bit, but you can't do much there. I don't think you can really do too many houses. There's too close to 223rd, right? So I've been kind of twisted here with all the new information. This is just my opinion. So I want to hear everybody else's too. Because originally, the last meeting, I was 100% with Josh that, why are we rezoning things? And then but the questions are, was it incorrectly zoned the first time for 22 years sitting there? I feel for the landowner too. And is it a good use of land just to sit there empty? Maybe not. Is it a good use of land of RP4? Maybe not either. It's a very tough decision for us as well. I think they did a great job. Austin and the architect have done a great job trying to appease the residents there and the public in general by moving things around, putting the fence, putting the parking lot, in the back, leaving all the trees. There's been a lot of things that they're trying to do that we haven't seen a lot of that in other areas that, and you can put apartments right next to residential. They do in a lot of cities. And so, I'm still kind of on the board here because I'm not sure if it was incorrectly rezoned the first time, C2 or not, but if you can't develop for 22 years, I'm starting to question that, I want to hear what other commissioners think.
I think that's sort of where I'm coming from, is that if we've tried C2 for 20-something years and nothing's happened, is that piece of property going to remain undeveloped?
It will.
But we have an opportunity by the proposal to put the land to good use.
That's right.
So,
But I'm also very,
mean,
Rodolfo, I'm very concerned too about the traffic there and the potential problems and potential accidents with kids too.
Well, and the sidewalk also. I mean, somebody mentioned you wouldn't let your kid, even if there was a sidewalk there, you wouldn't let your kids walk on that sidewalk on 223rd. I mean, that street is not, if you go to Olathe and look at their streets,
Well-
they're actually streets with,
Well,
I'm thinking more crossing over.
I'm not trying to argue with you, but the whole point is that 223rd Street will be improved at some point in time.
Yeah.
So
20 years from now.
I totally understand your frustration with it, but it will be improved. Might not be in our lifetime, but it will be improved. I've lived here.
It's all about funding.
I've lived here for 27 years, believe me, I know. I live in the older part of town. I live next to apartments, right across the street. My house is actually zoned R4.
How much land are you gonna need?
Hang on, guys, yeah,
So,
No, be respectful, please.
so I'm just telling you what my experience has been. I got on the planning commission because I wanted to be involved in the city and how it develops. I ran for the chair position because I felt like I had something to contribute to the city. And so that's why I'm here. That's why all of us are up here, the volunteers. And we hear exactly what you're saying. Believe me, I do. But we are a quasi judicial organization and we are supposed to follow the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan says that a mixed use resident or mixed use commercial qualifies to be zoned RP4. I mean, that's what it says. It says it's supposed to be a hedge between commercial and residential. And do we believe that commercial is going to go in on the open land to the north? I believe it will. It's a big lot, it's a big area. There'll be something that goes in there. So is this going to be a buffer between the R1 on the south?
Or could it be developed in commercial, right?
Or it can be developed into commercial right next to them.
And you might not like what gets developed there commercially.
So I understand,
Just letting you know.
I understand what
worse.
the
Could be a lot worse.
quandary is here with it. But as far as I can see, having been on the planning commission, I think I've got this second most senior position here.
Easy,
You're the
easy.
third most.
Sorry, third most, excuse me, third most. This qualifies for what our job is to do, is to show that this fits with the comprehensive plan with that. Now-
Mr. Mitchell, can we go back and
Sure.
clarify something for me real quick? So is there a drive off of Jefferson still?
No.
No.
Okay, so then per Mr. Young's request, we have not talked about right in, right out on 223rd.
Okay.
No, those are my questions.
I'm certainly open to discuss that.
I just know that Spencer asked us to make sure we clarified each of the points, and I think we've hit on all of them, but maybe Mr. Young.
Thank you, Ms. Squire. I appreciate that.
Actually, we're done with public comment.
I'm the civil engineer.
Oh, okay.
I'm at the traffic engineer.
You're going to talk on a professional level. Okay.
Yes, yes. David Wood, Caw Valley Engineering, 14700 West 114th Terrace, Lenexa, Kansas 66215. So generally speaking, Jefferson Street, right in, right out, Victory Street, the development itself is a very low traffic generator. I think that was probably already established here. So the question becomes, is it desirable to have a secondary point of access from a fire access, fire safety, those kind of things? The plan is proposed, shows a dead-end hammerhead at the end of the apartment complex on the west end. It does comply with fire code. Generally, I mean, from a professional perspective, I would like to have 2 points of access. I think most people would want 2 points of access. My preference would actually be to have it off Jefferson Street because you've already got an established roadway there. The setbacks from the 223rd Street were satisfactory from our perspective to be safe for people coming in and out. Again, with the amount of frontage that they have, they could have a right in, right out kind of centered, mid-block. I mean, it would be functional. Not going to be overly detrimental. Sight lines are good, but it's really just kind of a preference. So if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Great.
So you're saying if they came out of Jefferson, they could only turn right, they couldn't turn left onto the highway?
I think he's addressing it going on to 223rd Street, correct?
Right. So yeah,
223rd.
Access to 220.
Instead of having it on the side streets, it'd be direct onto
I
200.
mean, really, there isn't a lot of benefit gained from having a right in, right out access there
Okay.
versus full access, again, because the amount of traffic that's actually utilizing these driveways is fairly low. I mean, we're talking less than like 50 cars in the peak hour, and the half that's coming in, half that's going out. So it's not like it's like this huge traffic load. People would probably be inclined to just make the left-hand turn there anyways with a low-density driveway. Again, it's just like at Jefferson Street, and I think something to keep in perspective, and we did review the comprehensive plan that the city has out there for 223rd and Victory and what that may look like down the road and kind of put that in the context of this development. In long term, that study recommends that Jefferson Street, for instance, is a right in, right out. There's a raised median. Whether or not this all comes to fruition is based off a lot more development beyond a 48-unit apartment complex. I mean, it speaks to probably what's in that comprehensive plan. That's what they would have looked at. as far as, a large commercial load to the north or things happening to the east for additional residential, and it's all kind of taken into context. My assumption is that that hasn't been implemented yet because the traffic load currently on 223rd doesn't warrant it. Now, the safety perspective of the road itself being two-lane unimproved and things like that, there are probably some deficiencies that the city could do to help improve the situation. Actually went out there this afternoon just to kind of watch traffic about 5 o'clock. I mean, there's not a lot of traffic moving on the roadway, even at, what one would consider peak rush hour for a bedroom community. But, there are trees and there's other things that are kind of up there adjacent to the right-of-way just south of the roadside ditch. If somebody came along and took some of those out, it would probably improve sight lines to do some of those kind of things. I will touch on one other subject, the sidewalk that the developer's proposing. And somebody mentioned the right-of-way for future road improvements. I'm not necessarily the civil engineer on this project, but from what I've understood, what I've seen from the plan, they're dedicating a substantial amount of right-of-way along that frontage to support those future improvements. And I think the sidewalk that was presented schematically in that plan actually showed being installed back there on the future right-of-way line, not right out adjacent to the roadway. Again, you wouldn't want to have a sidewalk adjacent to an unimproved roadway. It just really isn't safe. Many points have already been made, so.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Sorry, I just realized I was probably talking very loud because I'm not used to having a microphone. So I apologize if I came across as being angry or something there, because I am not. I enjoyed this opportunity to serve up here. But I do want to give everybody an opportunity to have all their questions answered. Cindy, do you have anything else?
Well, Jefferson, go back to our CIP. I don't have it in front of me, and I didn't dig it out. Is Jefferson Street on our CIP in the next 5 years? Because that's a really tight turn intersection there. That's not on our CIP, correct?
Amy's shaking her head no.
I don't think so.
No.
But they believe that's a better option than a right in, right out.
So I'm sorry, say that again now?
Jefferson Street, if I understood him correctly, he believes that an entrance off of Jefferson is a better option than a right in, right out on 223rd.
I believe that's what he was saying, yes.
Okay.
He's shaking his head yes, so.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry for this.
So I believe so the original plan did call for a entrance off of Jefferson and off of Victory Road. And in response to the public's concerns, the applicant changed it to just be coming in and off of Victory and not coming in off of Jefferson any longer. So I'm not sure how, Amy, maybe you can help me, or Spencer, you can help me on this. This is an RP4 zoning, but my understanding is that we have control as the planning commission to accept the plan as presented, but this is actually a rezoning. So how does that?
They have to have a site plan, right, Nick?
They have to have a site plan, but this is just for the rezoning of it. So would it come back to us if we would vote yes on the rezoning, would we still have the option or the opportunity to determine what the site plan is? Or is this all presented as one thing that would be decided tonight?
Right, so it's a rezoning. When it's a planned district, you do the rezoning and the preliminary development plan at the same time because it's that planned district, it just doesn't make sense to come back. You have another chance to come back and look at the final development plan.
Okay.
And your job will be to determine whether that is in substantial compliance with the preliminary plan. And the code will set out what substantial compliance means.
Right.
So yeah, you'll have a chance to look at it again.
So this is really a preliminary site plan we're approving along with the rezoning, then they come back with a final site plan that has to be approved.
Correct. And one thing to remind you, and I think, I don't know if I need to say this, but you can approve it as presented. You can also approve it with conditions. So you've seen some conditions that have been proposed. The things that were asked of you by the city council aren't necessarily items that they want to see as conditions. They're just discussion topics for you to talk about. You can pick and choose from stipulations that are on this handout. You can make new stipulations tonight. You can omit some of these from the handout. It's up to you all as a planning commission where that consensus comes from. If there are people who like it, but only with certain things, this is the time to say, I would only support it if, so that you can talk about those conditions that would be there for it. I will say from the staff perspective, as far as the right in, right out, just to probably close that loop, that would probably require some significant changes to the site development layout, because the parking lot would be on the opposite side of the buildings from your right in, right out on 223rd, which would make it difficult from you guys from going to a preliminary to a final development plan. It adds some wrinkles. So unless you all really think that is a significant amount safer than what's currently proposed from a staff perspective, I think you've talked about it, but you're on the right track there. I don't know that that would be necessarily the easiest thing for you all and for staff to do as far as bringing it back to you on final development plan.
Okay, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit, but, so,
Thank you.
Mary, do you have any questions or concerns?
So safety is my huge thing because one of those 6 accidents was my kids. That was a little further down though. But with one entrance, let's say there was an accident right there at 223rd and Victory. How's everybody gonna get in? If fire truck or EMS or somebody is right there in front, where are they gonna go? How are you gonna get out?
They're stuck.
They're stuck. So I don't agree with this. I liked how they had it because yes, it does go on Jefferson, but it's further north to where it's not gonna really impact the houses. It's further down where it would kind of go out by their sign, from what I'm understanding. But if there's a fire, you're stuck, you know? I just don't
There's
like.
a heart attack.
Yeah, there's a heart attack over here at, on this side, and then a fire, something, but they're stuck at this one because, well, the fire down here is just gonna burn because they can't get in. So I don't like that there's just one, which forces all of that traffic to one corner, which is selfishly, that's the corner closer to where I live, but then they're all gonna go down Victory, which is hauling through there, or turn left, and then you're gonna have this huge line of cars instead of kind of breaking them up a little bit if they go straight or left or right, whichever way they go. But, and then it says that with the pedestrian, there's be an access gate. Where is that down there where the intersection would have been on Jefferson? So people can walk in and out? Or are we exiting and entering on foot if they choose to walk up and down with sidewalks without? Are they having to go through into the complex where the one intersection is gonna be? So you've got people walking back and forth, trying to get in or out of the complex as the cars are coming through, in and out with just one drive. That's my thing.
Would you like the applicant to discuss where those entry gates would be?
Yeah,
Or is-
that would-
Okay.
Well, and I think I want to resemble Mary's remark here. I'm concerned about the traffic on Victory backing up, and there's no sidewalks there, and you know that to develop sidewalks is too expensive, and everybody's walking to the aquatic center from the Victory Woods over there, right? So it's kind of a dangerous spot if that backs up. That's more my concern than anything.
Well, yeah, because then they're going straight down Victory to go either to the stop sign, or a lot of people that are inconvenienced going that way, they go through the parking lot at the optometrist's office. So we've got people cruising this way and then hauling through the parking lot, which a lot of times are seniors that don't get around very fast, but they have to cross that parking lot with a car going 40, or myself, one of the two, because I'm not very fast anymore. You got them, because I'm out there landscaping at night, and I got people flying through. And I'm like, what are you doing? Because they don't want to turn down there. I don't know.
Dangerous.
The safety part of it is my thing.
Yeah,
I don't,
we always talk about, it's not if, it's when a child is gonna get hit on Victory.
Or
Because that
Mary.
aquatic center's right there, and now you got the dollar store there, or whatever that is.
yeah.
I'm telling you, it's a big deal.
Yeah, and we're gonna invite the applicant up to talk about the entry gates.
Because they're 13-year-olds that just do that. They'll ride their bike or try to walk over.
My son is 19. He does not drive. He walks it by his choice. He walks everywhere or rides his bike.
No, I know it's true because I used to live over there.
So, he's trying to do his thing up and down Victory, and
It's
So-
dangerous.
So I'm not trying to.
Go ahead.
No,
Keep
yes.
moving forward here.
Go ahead, yeah.
Austin, do you have something?
Yes, to address that, the stipulation says no access gate. So there will be a fence around the facility we were not proposing having like a arm swing gate to like drive in. The gates being discussed would be, you know, I can bring the presentation up again, but basically where the sidewalk intersects with the building, there would be a gate for like a person to walk out there. So it's
Oh,
not,
just at the.
yeah, so it's not a gate in the, like, it's not a drive gate. It's gates for like pedestrians to walk.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay. On the kind of the fire access question, we had also taken a look at potentially almost leaving the plan exactly how it was proposed with the access drive onto Jefferson Street and including like a fire gate with a Knox box. That way, if there was an accident, you know, on Victory Road, that would preclude people from being able to exit the facility. The fire department could open that one up for temporary access, or if there was some sort of access restriction and there was a fire, the fire department or, you know, emergency medical, you know, folks could access from Jefferson Street. So that is also another potential fix is, you know, leave the plan as proposed and then just make one of those entrances essentially like a fire and emergency entrance with a Knox box included on it.
So there was no, on the stipulation one, the pedestrian access gates were only,
Those are only on the sidewalks for like connecting to the pedestrian sidewalks kind of around the facility.
I gotcha.
And there's,
So they're still trying to run back and forth in between cars coming in or out.
yeah, well, no, so there's, I believe, 6 to 8 pedestrian, access points throughout. So as you see, the building connects to the sidewalk, there would be an access pedestrian gate there that then goes on to the sidewalk. So there's not one choke point, there's like 6 to 8 pedestrian gates throughout the community.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was wanting to know, like
Okay.
where,
So those will be
instead
like
of
along
having just the one
223rd.
entrance and exit with people walking in and out, there are gates that they can go walk out to
Right.
walk onto
Yeah,
the
right.
sidewalk.
Like
Yeah.
Yes.
223.
Any place where the fence intersects the sidewalk would be a gate.
Okay, and then that remains unlocked all the time? I guess, I don't know, curious. Okay,
Okay. Anything else, Mary?
no, I'm good.
You have anything else? besides
No,
what you
I just keep going back.
Okay.
To the original, should it, stay C2 or go to RP4?
Right.
Yeah, and the legal perspective on that, because that's a good point that two of you have talked about. So I can't speak to what happened 20-some years ago when it was set as C2. However, from a typical city staff and legal standpoint, when we're zoning from C to R is considered a down zoning. So in most cities, if you start at the C, there's an understanding, well, if this doesn't work, we can always go back down to it's easier to go from commercial to residential than vice versa. It's harder to justify going from a residential to a commercial because that's a more intense use. So I would imagine at that point in time, one of the considerations was there's not a lot developed around here. Let's plan it for C to see if 223rd becomes more of a commercial throughway and it's there. Because if we do it as residential now, we're never getting a commercial in this site. As opposed to if we do it as commercial now, the door is still open for residential. So I would expect that the reason it was zoned commercial back in the early 2000s was not there to preclude residential at some point. Knowing that there's always a planning commission and a city council to assess when the time comes, like we're doing now, is it right? But generally that down zoning from commercial to residential is more common and favored.
Of course, that's conjunction, right?
Thank you. So, Rodolfo, you have anything else, any comments or questions you wanna?
No, I've got them all.
Okay.
I guess I have one more point, and it's,
Sure.
you know, I've said it before, I don't think we're gonna solve the issue with, kids going to the aquatic center and not having a safe way. I know that like over on 215th was approved and there's no swimming pool in there, and I just think that, it would be really beneficial if the, residential areas that we are approving has a swimming pool or something to attract kids and make them stay there, especially when we don't have safe ways for them to get somewhere. But I know that that's not gonna happen here. I'm just saying, we've approved other places before without having safe access. I hope nobody gets hurt going to the aquatic center at some point. Maybe they end up with a bus that goes around and picks up kids. That's something the city could pay for, I guess. But anyway, just a thought. I agree. I can see now why you're saying the C2. Maybe it was originally zoned that way. I guess that would make sense that that they would do that. So to make it easier, that to go down to a residential So I don't think I have any other questions. Thank you.
Cindy?
I don't know. Yes, I really don't have any questions. My biggest comment is I just think that, excuse me, again, we've got a cart before a horse here, I think. I don't,
In what sense?
I think that I think those roads are not ready for the density. And I think, I don't know, a 3-story building, balconies or no balconies. Jefferson Street is not in the CIP. 223rd, we all know is going to change, but when? I don't know. I just think that I don't know. I'm not too much in favor of sending this back to council when we've all been against it 2 months ago or a month ago, and we were against it 2 weeks ago. I'm not seeing that there's an easy answer for this. Austin has done an amazing job. The need for this is there. I just don't know if that area is ready for it. And that's nothing that we can control when an applicant brings in the piece that they want. We can't set and plan it for them. We can't say, yes, we want this, but we want it at XYZ location. The applicant has owned and still owns a lot of property in Spring Hill that's not developed. You can't keep landowners from selling and doing what they need to do. I don't know. This is a tough one, guys. I don't know. I think that's a big safety issue. I think it's a big need.
So I will address your question about being opposed to it last time. When it was brought up incorrectly that this was able to be approved without, well, let me start again. This was able to be built without going through the rezone, without the rezoning. And that was it, and that was given to us as incorrect information last time. That was something that Josh and Steve and I all had a discussion about up here. And so when I understood that that was incorrect and not the correct information that we were given last time, and then as I'm looking through what our multi-use or what our zoning calls for, that convinces me that we should vote for this. I'm just, that's my opinion. I'm not saying anybody else has to come to that same conclusion, but that's the conclusion that I come to, is that this is what this land was designed for with the last comprehensive plan. Mixed-use commercial would be, a downgrade from that would be R4 or RP4. Now, I would have some issues with the plan that's been presented now with only having one entrance and things like that. But I believe that all that can be addressed at some point in the future because of that, because what we said, this is just a preliminary plat, essentially.
Yeah, and so to clarify that, so the code allows you can approve a preliminary development plan. And before you get to the final development plan, you can come back and revise that preliminary development plan as long as there hasn't been a substantial change. Well, you can revise it no matter what. If there hasn't been a substantial change, you can revise the preliminary development plan without a new public hearing. So just a normal meeting, you guys have a discussion. So the code sets out what a substantial change would be. Modifying the entry exit points there on Jefferson would not constitute a substantial change, most likely. I'm a lawyer, so I'm going to punt and say almost certainly it wouldn't. But likely some of those changes, things like balconies, that might be a closer call, but probably not a substantial change. So you can approve it. And again, you can have conditions on that either way tonight. But if there's a consensus from the city council meeting or from the community that we want to change that and the applicant agrees with it and you guys agree with it, you can do that again without doing the entirely new public hearing process just at a single meeting. time-wise, it would have to be next month because this needs to be done by year-end for the applicant, but you do have that flexibility.
Right.
But with RP4, we can require or ask that there be 2 entrances.
Yes.
And there'll be just, balconies, no balconies, whichever way they want to go with it. But that's my thing, is the safety. We do need affordable housing, which I want to say is not the same as low income. We need affordable housing, but it needs to be safe. The people still need to be safe. I mean, the
With that
community.
With that safe being said, Austin, back in April when you first brought this, one of my questions was tornado storm shelters. Did we get those put into the bathroom like we talked about?
Sorry, Austin.
So at this stage, again, it's a preliminary development plan. So we have elevations, we have a site plan. Those details are typically figured out more towards the building permit stage. They
Okay,
will
I
be, sorry, go ahead.
I can wait for that.
Okay.
The word safety came up, and it's
Sure.
sidewalks, storm shelters, and that stuff with me. So
Sure. And I can address that too. When you're doing this is a area that you can get very deep into, what is considered a storm shelter, what is considered a FEMA approved storm shelter. There's a lot of things that go into those. They get very technical, way above what I understand, to an engineering level. But, for instance, we have a senior community in Kansas City, Kansas that, the first phase of it has storm shelters in they're basically closets on the patios and balconies. Those are storm shelters. And the reason we did that, because you don't want to do that as an interior bathroom or something of that nature, because those doors are very heavy. So you have kids. I have a 3-year-old and I have a 3-month-old. My 3-year-old is going to be running around slamming that 100-pound door, and somebody's finger is going to get in it, and it's going to be a big car door. So you do have to be very careful where they are. So it is something that we absolutely will look at. Again, me being from Salina and growing up in Kansas my whole life, I certainly understand the safety and weather aspect.
thank you.
So as a commission, we have the job to either recommend or deny what we've been presented as being as being substantially conforming to the comprehensive plan or not. And so,
Whether we recommend rezoning, right?
Yes.
C2 to RP.
yes.
Not if it's in compliance. We know it's in compliance.
So,
The decision on whether you're approving it is based on you approve if you find it in compliance. And if you find it not in compliance, that's something that warrants against recommending approval. So they're kind of lockstep together. You make the finding, as long as you all believe that it's in compliance with the comprehensive plan, that's a good point for recommending approval to the city council. When you're recommending that the city council not approve the rezoning, part of that is a determination that we don't think this is part of the comprehensive plan or in compliance with it. So that makes it's a cause and effect. The compliance with the comprehensive plan is something you need to establish before you decide to rezone. And it sounds like you feel like it is. That's a good thing to talk about amongst yourselves, but.
You're still deciding if you want to rezone the C2 to RP4, even if it does meet the, mixed use area. That doesn't mean you agree that it should be rezoned from C2 to RP4, right?
Right.
that's what we have to decide.
So yeah, the ultimate decision is rezoning.
It's in compliance, it's just,
Okay.
do we really want to rezone it?
So, it's in compliance. So let's have some deliberation and decide.
Well,
Or maybe we just need a motion and just vote. We can either need to decide that we want it, each individually, and then vote, and then send it to the city council, and then they'll make the final determination.
That's right.
Because that's what we do.
And before you guys get to motions, rather than me coaching through potential amendments to motions, I would recommend you talk about conditions that you want on there, so that when you're making a motion, I'm not having to jump in and ask you guys to move to amend, then you have to vote on the amendment, and then it makes me look like a huge nerd because I'm into Robert's rules. So, yeah, I would, if you guys want conditions or not want conditions, talk that over before the motion, so your motion is as clean as possible, so that the city council has as much understanding of what you are or are not recommending.
Assuming you recommend to rezone C2 to RP4.
Well, your recommendation can be to not rezone, and then you don't really need any conditions, so that's exactly, yeah.
I can't make a motion, so I mean.
Well, I mean, to me, I mean, obviously the petitioner doesn't have a problem with stipulation 1, 2, 3, or 4. And that's something that the city, I think, council was also interested in. Since this comes from them,
Yeah, it was a close vote,
yeah.
3-2.
And there's, as it relates to 2 and 3 of those stipulations, there's been some back and forth on whether you all want that. So yeah, be in mind, you don't necessarily have to include. 2 is the access on Jefferson, and 3 would be the balconies. So you guys don't need to include any of these, but those are the 2 that I've been trying to take notes, and I'm a notoriously bad note taker. But food for
Well, city
thought.
council also asked for an adjustment from 3-story to 2-story.
City council wanted you to discuss.
Consider,
Yeah,
right.
consider that. So this is the list of things that they wanted you to go through and talk about. So you can send it up with no stipulations. You can send it up with a whole bunch of new stipulations, but you had to at least talk about what's on this handout from the minutes that Amy gave you all.
But I think.
Spencer, what was city council's understanding of what Mr. Mitchell explained with the C2 being able to be built on versus it needed to go to an RP4?
Sure. So we did discuss that with council. I do think we worked on clarifying that it cannot be built as a matter of right in C2. You would need to get that overlay district, and that's one of the reasons that they included that as a recommendation or a requirement for you guys to consider before doing your recommendation. If they wanted to make sure that you all had that same understanding that they did, that we're all on the same page. Yeah, this isn't something they can't go break ground on this tomorrow if you say no.
Okay.
But they couldn't if you said yes, they need building permits, but regardless.
Well, okay, maybe we should talk about, I don't know if going from 3-story, since we're talking about this, 3-story to 2-story, it's gonna cover more land and encroach probably closer to the residents if you do that, my guess.
Originally, there was 5 apartment buildings. Am I remembering that wrong from April? Did you have 5 buildings
I
up there?
believe
Okay.
there was more, or there was talked about a second phase or something.
Oh, yeah, there's 2, isn't it?
And then you went down
Yeah.
to 2.
So yeah, when the original plan had more units, so part of this is reflective of a lower amount of units.
Uh-huh. And there's no more room, there will be no more buildings, that's it. Okay, so another question that I have, I guess it's not really a question, we didn't. But I'm just remembering, one of the, citizens from the audience said, that's my backyard that they're showing. You look over here and you're over here, you're right into people's yards. If that's true, and this is something that we move forward, is there, conditions that we can put into place to have more mature trees that are put back there as well to help with those people's sight lines?
So.
You remember that conversation?
So you guys can discuss trees. You can't require someone to put in a mature tree because that's just not really, you can't really transplant a mature tree that's 30, 40, 50 feet. They have to come, I've never seen a company that does that. It sounds remarkably impossible with the root systems that a mature tree would carry. You can you can request, as part of their landscaping plan, that they include additional buffering. Those would start as smaller trees, so I do want to make sure everyone's on the same page there, but that eventually they would grow into larger trees, and you can request that as a condition if you'd like.
But aren't we talking, I'm sorry, go ahead, Cindy.
Spencer, we couldn't require the landscape plan to change the caliper of tree?
Well, the problem is you can't require something, you can't go in there and say, we want a bunch of trees that are 12-inch caliper at breast height, because that's just not something that is feasible to put in. I have yet to see a company that's even able to put in that.
But I think our caliper now is like a 2-inch or something. You couldn't ask
Yeah.
for a 4-inch bid? I'm just
Here's the thing, I don't know if the applicant can even get and talk about it. I just don't know if that's a possible stipulation as far as how big they can get a new tree to be put in there. And that's what we're talking about, is putting in additional buffering. Well, you can't put in an additional buffer on a 6-inch caliper tree.
What about like really tall berms? Like 4-foot berms, or, you know what I mean, with trees on top?
Yeah, you're welcome to.
Yeah.
We're having a discussion here, so this
Yeah,
is.
sure.
this is-
And just, we're trying to be respectful. We don't want to interject in
No, you're not.
conversation, but I did pull up on GIS while we were sitting there, as the neighbors were talking about the trees that exist. They certainly have trees in their backyards, but there's a substantial grove of trees on this property, and that's the one that we intend not to disturb. So with landscape buffer, with a berm, we're happy to put in a large berm with trees on top of it. I know there's cities around, Leawood specifically, I've developed in, and they are caliper requirements. I do know, I'm not the expert, but I do know that there are certain caliper trees that are possible to get, there's certain that are not. I could not tell you what is and what is not possible. We're certainly open to having more trees, higher caliper trees, having a landscape berm. I would just simply ask that the grove of trees that is there, we really would like to maintain that. So if we're gonna push the berm out in front of it, that's fine too, as long as it doesn't encroach the parking lot. So we're open to any and all of these things. If you wanna add them on top, we'll certainly take it to the civil engineer, the landscaping architect, and happy to come back, when we go to the final plan and try to represent all the things that you've asked for.
Question for you guys, is there an effect if you put in a new berm, is that gonna affect the mature trees that are already there? Like, is that sort of cutting off the nose despite the face?
To me, it does look like there's a portion that would. I apologize, I don't know if you have a way to project it, but basically, if you look at GIS, you can see exactly the grove of trees we're talking about, and it would be where kind of that landscape berm is, so.
There's also an existing berm there now.
So this is our civil engineer, so he can answer this more intelligently than also I can.
By going higher with the berm, you need more footprint too, so we run out of room and going higher. Also, just in the nature of grading, putting in storm sewer along that, we are gonna impact those trees. We always try to save them if we can, but, there's practical limits. Otherwise, you'd be putting up retaining walls or things like that, just aren't practical.
Can you speak to the sewer?
On that grove of trees,
Could you speak to the sewer issue? Sorry. So, because somebody had also said, the sewer, that their sewer is not powerful enough for 48
I think water.
units. Water, sorry.
Water pressure.
Well, sewer would be important too, but water.
The water, to be honest, we haven't gotten to that point yet where we looked at anything with the water pressure. We just know that the water is available. And we always go into a city that's, here you have a platted subdivision, and the assumption is that you have water, and I've never really run into it before where you have an issue with that.
We do, as I said, we're purchasing this parcel, but the parcel across Jefferson Street that will remain C2. We have no intended uses for it. We're intentionally not rezoning it from the standpoint of, again, we have so if we needed to extend over to Blackhawk, when that was developed, I'm sure their infrastructure is a little different than the neighborhood behind. So that is an opportunity and something that we're allowed on the west. We've got a lot that we can go through. It's one of the reasons we've offered to extend sidewalks and that through it, basically as it was developed, because we have no intention for it, so.
As part of the application for the affordable housing portion of it as well, we have to get well serve letters from all utility providers. And I don't have them in front of me, so I can't recall from back in April when we received them, but I do think that they have, capacity. I think they add a comment about whether or not there's existing capacity there in those will serve letters, but every utility has issued us letters saying that they will serve the area, and that I'm pretty sure that it says that there's capacity there as well, so.
And one thing to add, Ms. Dominic, the engineer touched on this, but because there's gonna be some storm sewer along that southern side of this property, putting that in often or typically or can affect the root systems of those large trees, which does result in like an unintended loss of trees. So I want you all to be aware of, we're talking about mature trees. They can't guarantee we're not gonna lose any trees. We're gonna put this tree and we're gonna put, I'm not saying there's an outcome there. That's something for you all to be aware of, and going forward on every development you see, that's always a consideration. The city does have new tree requirements and do we have a new tree replacement requirement?
yeah.
You all could, as a condition, ask them to exceed that. Up to you if that's seems like that's kind of where you're angling at it, but I did want to make sure that comment about the storm sewer, you guys understood what that was, so.
Can we go back to those trees for just a minute? I keep hearing that the trees are on the flat side, but I also heard Mr. McCray say they were his trees.
Correct.
So they split the property line. There are some trees that are on our property and some trees that are on their property.
Okay.
And we have a overlay that we're trying to figure out how to project.
And again, you know, our intention is going to be to maintain the mature trees. So, you know, if there's opportunities for us to move storms around, all those kind of things will be considered for us to impact as little as possible. But, you know, if there is trees that aren't able to be saved, again, if there's a landscaping or a berm requirement that you all have that you want us to exceed, we're happy to put that into place. Our intention is not for the neighbors to feel like they are in our community, just like it's not our intention for our residents to feel like they're in their backyards. Those are not things that we want. So, you know, again, we'll consider any of those things and we'll do what we can. So, you know, if it's berms, if it's trees, you know, additionally, we're happy to consider all those.
Okay, what about parking? It seems like the number of parking
exactly.
was quite large as well. And if we're talking about from a 3-story to a 2-story, and you're spreading out that land footprint, does that spread out that parking or
So-
aesthetically trouble?
Yes, so there are multiple considerations in cutting the building from 3 stories to 2 stories. One is, again, the number of units won't change. So there are 2 ways you can do that. You can make the buildings larger or you can add another building. I think in both of those situations, the parking moves. The parking requirements technically should not change. It's the same amount of units, the same unit distribution, so that should not change. But it also doesn't put it in conformance with the comprehensive plan. So that's the other consideration.
How many parking spots?
I think there's 96, roughly, 96? Yes,
So it's
96.
two spots per unit,
That's all.
which we have, again, this is something we pay very close attention to. We own about 4,500 apartment units across the Midwest that we have developed all ourselves. We look at parking counts. We don't just develop a community. We look at it afterwards, so I can tell you parking counts and what's actually used. So we don't want to develop too many parking spaces because then you're cutting into green space. You also don't want to do too little because not only does it affect the residents and their lives, but it affects rentability. So all these things are things we look very closely at. You can see on there the lines that are on this one. As Austin said, I personally don't believe going down to a 2-story is going to be the outcome that really anybody wants here. The neighbors, again, we've looked into it, certainly could be done. It does exceed, I think, the building footprint size, so it kind of kicks us back out from a, you know, it's a material change. So from that perspective and the layout, I don't know that that's the best. So
I think I'm becoming more okay with 3 stories, as long as there's some bufferage there. And one other thing I just said it a little while ago was a swimming pool. So I don't know if that's any kind of consideration that you guys can throw that in there.
So, you know, specifically with this, I have no clue what's going on with the swimming pool or anything of that nature. Honestly, if this moved forward, again, we have no intent for that piece of land on our west. Quite frankly, I would be open to donate it to the neighborhood's HOA. I have no problem with that. I'm not trying to benefit from that. Okay, so, I don't know what the community pool or anything of that is, but, you know, it's not something that I would say, I will develop a pool and you can use it. That, you know, again, that doesn't make any sense it would be something to be like providing a neighborhood pool with no policing on. The reason our apartments are so well received typically is because I have control if somebody's mowing their yard or they're out there blasting their horn. I have a tenant selection process. We have laws that if your neighbor is breaking one of the rules, you know, they're going to be noticed and they can potentially be evicted because they're breaking those rules. So we as a community have a lot more control over what our residents do. And my concern with a pool would be, it would become a free-for-all, and I don't think that's something that anybody wants. There's really, you know, how do you police that, I guess would be my thing, so.
So I do have the landscaping requirements too. I printed them out before this meeting. So there's a gigantic table in the screening requirements. Again, this is the same landscaping requirement that commercial zoning currently has. It's high density, so it's a 6-foot, 100% opaque, fence. And then they have low impact screening on both sides of that fence, and there's 3 different types. Again, I only have 1 copy, so I'm happy to pass it around, but essentially it stipulates a certain amount of shade trees, a certain amount of ornamental trees, evergreen trees, and shrubs per linear foot across the kind of exposed area. So I think it's probably pretty apparent at this point. We're trying to make this work as much as possible. We're willing to make it the 99% of the way there, just meet us the other 1%. So if there's some iteration of, trees that you want to see from
I mean,
this list
honestly,
in a certain area, just let us know, put it in there, and we
If
can
it's
make it work.
possible, and you said we would like a stipulation to be you double the requirement that is in here, again, if it's possible, we will do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I need
Can
to either
landscape
vote or
part
have
of
a bathroom break.
I think Ms. Squire has a comment. Go ahead, Ms. Squire.
Can landscape be part of the final plan instead of trying to figure out landscape tonight?
So landscaping is traditionally part of the preliminary development plan. However, let me get back to my desk and look at whether that would constitute a substantial change for you all to amend that at a meeting or approve it in the final development plan. If they come in with increased landscaping in a final development plan and you all, that's what you wanted and it's a good thing, I don't see any problem with you all. I would be shocked if you guys denied a final development plan because it had more landscaping when you asked for more landscaping. So that's a decision that's in your hands. So to answer that question, I don't have a great one for you, but you can ask it as a condition. You can just have an understanding that it might have more, but that's up to you all.
Thank you.
Ms. Dominic, did you want to talk about taking a break before anything? Or?
Yeah, I just said we either need to vote or have a bathroom break because I can't hold it much longer.
So,
Same.
you have to make a motion.
I motioned to have a 5-minute break.
Second? I'll second it. I can second a motion. All in favor?
Yay.
Aye. Be back here at 9:57.
Yeah.
Maybe a year and a half ago.
On two
Ready?
Victory?
223rd.
Okay, let's go ahead and call the meeting back to order.
169.
Somebody
Yeah,
ran the
close
stop
enough.
sign and T-boned me because they were texting.
I get Mike's. This is yours.
So
Oh, he's ready.
we are back in discussion. Cinder, are you back with us?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just didn't want to leave you out.
Thank you.
So where's everybody at as far as,
I'm gonna make a comment. I wish Josh Earhart was here, because him and I saw eye to eye 100% on this last time about not rezoning, as, for certain reasons, because we've done that before in this city and it hadn't fallen through. So this is, for me, this has been it's been very difficult. Austin and the architect, they're some of the best people that have come in front of us in a decade to, present things to us. I'm just not convinced that should be rezoned from C2 to RP4, and that the original zoning might eventually get developed with the growth that we're having around that area. That commercial business could happen there. I think it's a possibility. That's just my opinion. Now, these guys could do a great job if they come in there. I don't think it's gonna negatively affect the property as much as everybody thinks it would. I just don't believe that. And you know why? Because I was against the Blackhawk apartments that went in. I voted against that. It came in and they're fine and it's not affecting the residential houses there. And so I wanted to say that because I've lived through a lot here on this. So I'm still kind of caught because I agreed with Josh on that, not rezoning it. But I'm actually more comfortable a little bit after the next round here. And the other thing I want to mention is that, with the landowner, it being C2 for 22 years, that's a big deal. He's the landowner. He owns the property, just as you own your property. So if the landowner is the one that comes and wants to rezone, and the developer will, do it on his behalf. And so I support the landowner too. So I'll tell you what, I know they've done a great job here. I'm still kind of on the fence here of what the right thing to do is, to be honest. And I'm
Steve,
still worried about the traffic too.
Steve, I agree with everything you've said. And I've been in the same situation. We bought our house. You guys have heard me say it before. Out our front door, we had a cornfield one year. The next year was a wheat field. And we got apartments next door across the street. It's not hurt our land value. They've not been bad neighbors. But I still think that at some point we have to stop and say the city has to catch up so that we can continue the development. Austin has done a fabulous job. This whole complex looks very appealing. I don't know that the city's ready for it.
I like the fact that there's the possibility of commercial going across the street. I guess I've always wondered what would happen to that land. And if there is commercial across the street, then I do think that it would be more likely that this current land that C2 could sell as C2 wouldn't necessarily have to be rezoned. I could see somebody moving in there if across the street is all commercial as well.
so Cindy, you say that, but what's your criteria then? I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just trying to understand.
I think it's safety. I think it's the congestion of the vehicles. I just don't know that our road infrastructure is ready to hold it.
So let me present this. If somebody came in with wanting to put in a C2 business there that's going to have 4 times as much traffic, would you vote it down?
Probably.
Really? Because now you're not doing our quasi judicial. Because
I understand, Troy. I get it.
Okay.
Totally. And that's where I am just like Steve. My heartstrings and my logical mind is being pulled both directions. It, at some point, we have got to take care of our CIP, and we have got to get the projects done so that we can continue along this route. We have built and built and built out there, and just to throw it out, I can also see that we're going to wind up with another school out there. Where's all this traffic going to go? At some point we have to stop and say, we've got to take care of our roads. We're not taking care of what we already have. We're not taking care of what we need to get prepared for. I think this development is needed. I think that it's got to, I just don't know. Only having one entrance in and out bothers me immensely. I think it's a safety issue. I know that they said that they would put in the EMS bump, and we've done that before in developments. I can't think of the one north of town that we've done it for. Brookwood? No.
Brookwood Farms.
Brookwood Farms. That's what I started to say. I know that we've done it. It's a big, look at the road difference though. I don't know, guys. I don't know. I'm torn. I'm sitting just like Steve.
She is like.
I don't know.
That's why I said I wish Josh was here.
Well, I think too, it depends on what the commercial is that goes in there. When we're talking about, could it be 4 times the traffic? I mean, if there's a chiropractor building that's in there, I just took my dogs to a chiropractor in Baldwin City last Friday, and it was very small, is right on the main street, but there's no traffic there. So, I mean, I think it's hard to guess at this point, well, what would be the commercial that would go in there, because nothing's been attracted in 22 years. I don't know how hard they're trying to attract it. I don't know if that's Pat's job or the landowner's job. I don't know who's, interested in that, but it could be something as simple as that.
I was gonna say, that's not for us to choose.
Yeah, it's not our.
So I go back to, as a planning commission, what is our job? Our job is to compare what is brought before us to what the comprehensive plan is recommending goes in there.
But we also have to take into consideration, don't we, what the public says? Otherwise, we don't have public hearings.
Yeah, equal balance, yep.
We take it into consideration, but as a quasi judicial, we are supposed to determine whether it qualifies to go to the city council with a approval that this matches what our comprehensive plan says, or whether it doesn't.
And
But
talking about taking in comments, definitely, that's why we're here having public hearings. That's why you all made a decision tonight to allow the public to speak, to let you guys hear what they have to say. You do, beyond the comprehensive plan, beyond the public comments, your staff reports always have this in there. It starts on page 4. It goes through the city's criteria that's in city code. So the golden case sets out like 8 factors, and the Supreme Court said, these are the things we'd like to see you look at. You don't have to. This isn't a grading rubric. City code sets out more factors than that and says, these are the things we want you to look at as a planning commission. So take a moment, look at your staff reports. I'm not saying read what staff writes and agree or disagree with that, but look at what those bolded number 1, number 2, number 3 are. And those are the criteria that you're looking at this as a rezoning on, rather than just, the public comment was this, the comprehensive plan says that, they compete. Well, there's 14 factors for you guys to look at and talk about, and I know it's been a long meeting. I'm not saying let's go through 14 new discussion points, but as we talk about the criteria and what to look at, those are what you're looking at.
Because the rezoning is just rezoning, and then you go through that, and then that's when, because we don't get to choose, but we get to decide if that's gonna work, and then once it does, that's our job, is to make it safe, as well as safe as we can after that. But as long as it meets all the criteria.
Right.
But I'm with you guys, I don't know.
And this and to Troy's comment, that both of them meet the comprehensive plan. It's a mixed use. It could be C2 or RP4.
Correct.
We're trying to decide if it should be rezoned from C2 to RP4. And was it originally zoned C2? Was that incorrect? I know one of the attorneys here, which was really good, said, yeah, it was probably zoned C2 incorrectly the first time, but I don't know if I necessarily agree with that.
So, Amy, I believe this was rezoned in 2001, is that right?
Correct.
What was it zoned in before 2001?
Rural.
Agriculture.
Oh, RR.
Rural, so yeah.
Rural.
RR is rural residential, which is
Wow.
kind of the standard zoning when it comes in from the county.
Residential.
I didn't know that.
I mean,
I don't know.
does that help you or not?
I'm like, no, I'm like Cindy. I'm on the fence. I don't
Yeah.
know what the best thing to do is.
And it could have been rezoned at the same time that all of the housing development went in, with the anticipation that it was going to be used for
Right.
either a small commercial piece or the pool and the house and the clubhouse. I mean, again, this is another one of those pieces that maybe was rezoned and never followed through with, like we've had other places in Spring Hill.
Yep.
I worry about one way in, one way out. I worry about the intersection at Jefferson. I worry about 223rd. I'm not as worried about kids getting across to the pool. The pool is another list of the pool, the Dollar Tree, the library, the school, the schools, the basketball games, the civic center being open. I mean, you could go on and with those kids from Blackhawk or Feather Ridge or the apartments that would potentially go in. We don't have access over there. Something has to give with that as well. But that's not what we can fix tonight.
Nope.
I don't know, guys. I just don't. I don't know that I've ever been on the fence about something as much as I have been this one. I personally, I'd rather it be 1-story apartments and go to 15 or 18 units and be affordable housing or senior income. But I can't set forth what a landowner is going to sell, and I can't set forth what a development's going to bring to us. That's my personal opinion. But on a planning commission side, gee willikers, this is a tough one. I just don't know. I just worry about safety. I worry about when we're going to get the CIP fixed to where we're actually getting things taken care of instead of putting the cart before the horse. Not just on this one, on several other things. It's just becoming, when does the buck stop and when do we start changing things around?
At this point, I'd say we put forth a motion and vote on it, and it goes one way or the other. I'm not trying to, I mean, if you're on the fence, you're on the fence, and I get that. I was on the fence last time. I mean, we talked about it. I had a hard time deciding what I was going to vote on it.
And obviously city council's on the fence about it.
Right.
Yep.
I offer a motion.
Sure.
I move to recommend approval of the Spring Hill Governing Board for rezoning, Development Plan Application Z 00108-2023. And Plat 0000114-2023.
You gonna put the stipulation?
I was gonna say, you're gonna add 8 stipulations to it.
With the stipulation of number 1, number 3, and number 4.
And potential landscape changes.
Okay.
So you want all the patios and balconies to be removed?
Okay, so the motion is a motion to recommend approval of this rezoning and preliminary development plan with the condition of stipulations 1, 2, and 3 as stated.
1, 3, and 4.
1, 3, and 4. I'm sorry, I even wrote it down. I told you guys I was bad at notes. 1, 3, and 4 as stated on the September 27th, 2023 letter from the applicant. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
That was what the motion was. Any second?
You can second, you can move to amend, you can discuss further.
Should we include the trash receptacle different location or no?
I think that's minor enough that we wouldn't have to make that change.
Yeah,
Okay,
moving the trash receptacle would be something that you could have them do for the final development plan. It would not constitute as substantial
I'm
change.
I'm just looking over the list.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Thank you, Ms. Squire.
Sounds like motion dies.
I just wanted to give you full time to go through. Are you done?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay.
Mr. Mitchell.
Okay.
With no motion, we're back to discussion. We would accept a different motion.
Okay.
Does anybody have a coin? I mean, this is hard. This is hard. I mean.
It is hard.
I feel like, honestly, I feel like city council is probably gonna approve it, and I would rather have some stipulations in there if we're able to do it on this end, but, maybe I'm wrong, but that's just kinda how I read when I was watching city council and how they voted.
Yeah, they can overturn us, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
They can.
So if we say no, that's fine. They can still approve it.
So yeah, this would be the time. Is there amongst you all, are there stipulations that you would like to see added or removed to the motion that failed? Would that change anyone's opinions?
I think the stipulations I have here are good.
I think if people are gonna approve it, I would want stipulation number 3 out of there. I think there needs to be balconies and patios, otherwise I think it's just gonna look silly, but,
Well, it looked pretty good.
and maybe attract a different crowd.
Okay. So you like the motion except for stipulation 3? I'm just trying to understand what you're. So you would like the motion to see it with stipulations 1 and 4 only?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Take out, it says all patio balconies
Yeah.
will be removed.
Right.
Yeah, it's fine with the balconies, what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think, I agree with that.
Okay. So is there any discussion about increased, shielding, any increased?
Potential landscape.
Yeah, any increased landscaping, would that be something that would make somebody feel one way or the other?
Wasn't that something we can decide later? Is that what you were saying with the
But
trash
you
receptacle
could put the
too, or-
stipulation in that you would like to see increased, just without defining what exactly it has to be.
Right, so you can put it, they have to increase it by 1.34%. Or you could just say, the stipulation would be increased shielding above and beyond what city code requires.
Some more trees.
Yeah, it's sort of up to you guys. You guys get the power here.
They're pretty willing to do it, so.
Yeah.
'Cause we can just say above right now, and then
Above
we can
beyond.
hash out later.
Correct.
What
That's
exactly
that's
you
what he was saying.
Okay.
I can't make any motions, so
Oh, I hear you.
I'm just waiting for your, if you guys have more discussion, or if somebody wants to make a motion. One way or the other. You can make.
Bueller.
If you choose to.
I recommend approval of, to the governing body for rezoning of the, planned application Z 0000108-23 and plat 00114-23 with stipulation 1 and 4 and a 5th stipulation that we increase, the landscaping buffer area.
And the motion on the floor is recommend approval of this rezoning with stipulations 1 and 4 from the September 27th, 2023 letter, and a third stipulation of increase the landscaping buffering requirements. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded with the stipulations 1, 4, and increased buffering for landscaping. We'll start the voting on the left.
Aye.
No, and I think the C2 zone was zoned correctly the second time, I guess, when it was rezoned. So I'm gonna deny it. I also think the traffic's too heavy there, and that eventually the commercial development will come in the future with all the development going up there. Even though they've done a phenomenal job, and those developers and architects and civil engineers are excellent. So I'm just voting no.
Okay. Aye.
Aye.
I'm also gonna say nay, based on, the traffic, but also, I do think C2 is going to be appropriate, is already appropriate, and I think the development will also come in the future, especially if it gets across the road. I'm also concerned about the roadway and that, it definitely needs to be improved, before we add more traffic.
Thank you. Cindy?
No. Reiterate what Mr. Sly and Ms. Dominic said. I think that the traffic is a problem, and if the council would like to come back in with adding some road work in there on Jefferson Street, that would help ease things with my mind on the CIP. That would be beneficial, I think. They know that they have a lot of road work ahead of them. I'm not telling them anything they don't already know, but no.
Okay. So I would say that motion fails because
Motion fails.
wasn't
It's not a
approved.
majority. So we are split 3-3. A
because we don't
failure
have
to make a
number of-
recommendation
right.
to the city council acts as a recommendation of denial of the application. So as it stands, if we adjourn for the night with no motion or vote, it's going to go to city council as a no, as a recommend for denial.
We've got three people's opinions on the board for the no's. Does it behoove city council to have the reasonings for the yes?
That's up to you all. It would,
I mean, I don't
Yeah.
mind.
yeah, we would want them to listen
I agree
to
with
it.
Troy, this is what it is. We're rezoning. And they've met everything required to rezone. I do not like the intersections. I don't like the traffic. But those stipulations will come further down. And you can't just turn down, I don't know. Cause the safety part, I agree with everybody. Cause I don't like the traffic, but as for what we're doing, it's a rezoning. We've said that 1,000 times. We're only rezoning. We're just rezoning. But I get it because of what we're going to. But as far as judicial part, they've met it.
I agree, that's where I'm coming from. I think that they meet the stipulations according to our master plan, and
Because it's been hammered into our head that's
Right.
it's what we're here for. You can't look at this and you can't look at that. This is what, trying to level head about it.
Yep. I would agree. I think I've stated a couple of times that I feel like they've met the requirements for the cities for a mixed use. And so that is why we should approve it. And I can certainly understand everybody else's concerns on it. I just don't agree with you, which is fine.
Because they could have done it the other way, correct? That we couldn't have ever known what it was gonna be when they put it there, right?
With the RP, we have to
has
know.
to, okay.
Yeah, it has to be.
So we have to know. So that's
But they didn't have to do all this additional.
correct. Correct.
So with them including the reasons why you guys said yes, it'll also be included why we said no.
Mm-hmm. Well, anytime you vote no against a motion, you have to include a reason.
Thank you.
So, as I understand, that was what our rules have always been.
Yeah.
That if you vote against the motion, then you have to state why you're voting against
I just would like it recorded. If council's getting the reasons for
Right.
yes, I want them to get the reasons for.
It's being recorded.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah, this meeting is being recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I meant if you're writing it down and giving it to them as minutes.
well, I'm pretty sure that the city council is gonna be watching this one.
Hello, good night.
All right. Thank you all for your input on that. Moving on to what's next on our agenda this evening.
Austin,
Thank you all.
thank you for all your time.
Yes, thank you for all the public coming. Appreciate you. We're down to discussion and reports. Discussion. Amy, do you have any discussion items?
Nope.
Any reports?
When do we have, the, comp plan people back before us?
Oh, that's a good question. Amy?
November.
At our regular November meeting?
I don't know. It's just sometime in November. We haven't scheduled it yet.
Okay, thank you.
So reports, no agenda items for community development were approved at the September 14th meeting, and approval of site plan SP 104 2023 for attic storage was approved at the September 28th city council meeting. Any announcements from planning commissioners?
Amy, I will be gone for 2 weeks in November.
Okay,
starting
thank
November 15th,
Starting November 15th?
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Are we still planning to do it on the second, or was there another, or do we have to wait?
It's gonna be the second,
Okay.
unless,
Make sure before I put it in stone.
yeah.
All right. Anything else?
No.
And
Motion-
I plan on, sorry, I plan on being here unless something changes with my staff, and I'll let you know.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
No, I can't make.
Oh, sorry, yes, yes, motion to adjourn, sorry.
So moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0.
Thanks, guys. Hopefully I'm back next month.